bold journalism.
But Drew Hernandez is a strong-minded individual.
Exposing lawlessness.
Drew Hernandez, who is ideological.
Finding the truth.
And use the word Antifa.
This is what they do.
Battling
They're
mainstream
liars. The woke mob, all they can do is lie.
These are the front lines.
Welcome to TPUSA Live. My name is Drew Hernandez, host of Frontlines. Welcome to the broadcast. We've got a great lineup for your TPUSA live stream today. I'm kicking things off with a look at the insane push from activists to mutilate children in Texas, plus some updates in the Jussie Smollett saga. Then we'll take it over to the couch for TPUSA Live with John Root and your other favorite TPUSA contributors who are celebrating the 2-year anniversary of 15 days to slow the spread and placing bets on who'd win in a fight, Elon Musk or Vladimir Putin. And then we'll send it over to Jack Posobiec for Human Events Daily for the very latest on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. Then Morgan Zegers and Connor Clegg dive into the Federalist Papers, number 19 on Freedom Papers. Plus, who is actually more pro-woman, conservatives or leftists? The great Alex Clark is breaking it down point for point during Women's History Month. The answer probably won't surprise you. My name is Drew Hernandez, and you are now on the front lines. All right, America. We got Austin, Texas in the news. If you missed it over the weekend, on Sunday, there was a pro-trans kid rally. The activists actually called it the Trans Kids Cry for Help rally. These are people that want to mutilate the genitals of children, that think that they have a huge say in the sexuality of a child, all the way down to what their genitals actually end up looking like, which is, yeah, pretty pedophilic and disgusting. But to give you guys a little bit of a background of what was taking place in Austin before we show you guys some of this insane footage, there was a couple rallies planned, and one of them obviously was the Trans Kid Rally, and it was in Austin, Texas. These dueling rallies were planned in downtown Austin on Sunday regarding Texas Governor Greg Abbott's directive concerning gender-affirming care for children. Both rallies were planned on Sunday just across the street from one another at 2 p.m. Yesterday. One was taking place right in front of the governor's mansion and the other on the south entrance of the Texas Capitol. Now, why was this happening? People are probably asking themselves. The dueling rallies come just 2 days after a judge in Travis County put a temporary halt on Abbott's directive issued last month, which instructed the Department of Family and Protective Services to begin child abuse investigations on parents who help their transgender children to receive gender-affirming care, aka transitioning surgeries, aka mutilating the genitals of little kids. If that doesn't bother you, then I don't know what will. I don't care what your politics are. That should really send a chill down your spine. You might sit back and say, that's kind of like pedophilic. Yeah, it is. On Friday, Judge Amy Clark ruled that the department cannot investigate child abuse claims based solely on parents providing or facilitating gender-affirming care. Following the temporary injunction ordered Friday evening, Paxton said he would appeal the ruling and has already filed an appeal. Thank God. Well, we had the great Savannah Hernandez. She is a reporter for Truth Social, the new social media app. She was on the ground and she wanted to talk to some of these people. And as always, these are mentally ill psychopaths that want to, mutilate the genitals of children. So do you think it's going to go well? No. Take a look.
You're not welcome here. You are not welcome to film the kids and parents.
So loving.
Okay, so we're not.
Back off! Back off! I will not. Back off!
I'm standing here. I'm not doing anything. I'm not being aggressive. You guys are the ones being aggressive with me, so I'd appreciate it.
Back off!
I have the right to stand here. I really do, and I think I'm going to stand here now just because
tolerant.
you guys are kind of being dicks. So,
The tolerant left just loves to have
being
conversations.
surrounded right now by a bunch of people. I'm here in Austin, Texas. I'm really interested in understanding just different viewpoints, why these people are here today, why they may think the way that they do. I think it's important, and we're not allowed to talk to them. We can go whichever way that I would like to go.
No.
But these people are stopping me and bullying me. Okay.
No, you're not wanted, Savannah. You're not wanted.
The BO
No, you're not
is ridiculous.
wanted.
Get out of here, Savannah. We hate you. We don't want you here.
Why do you hate me? What did I do?
Go.
I don't know about you guys, but I could literally smell that video from here, okay? Now, you can only imagine actually being there. Yeah, it's a pretty a bad stench. But anyways, that's not important. What's important here is that the reason why these people don't want to have conversations with anybody is because these are the people that want to mutilate the genitals of children. They know exactly what it means when they're talking about creating a trans kid, because they're the ones that are defending parents that want to mutilate their children and their genitals, which, listen, I don't care what your politics are, whether you identify as a leftist or a right-winger, if you cannot get behind protecting a child and their sexuality, their innocence, then there's something not wrong with me. There's something not wrong with Savannah on the ground wanting to talk to people that have these ideas. No. The ones with the issues are you. Because if you're going to run around out there, listen, I support the First Amendment to freely protest peacefully, but listen, man, I still have that same First Amendment right to turn around and say, hey, you want to mutilate the genitals of children? You're a pedophile, okay? And that's the truth. Because if we cannot protect children, then we don't have anything. These are the same people that want to slaughter babies in the womb, so it's no surprise that they want to mutilate babies outside of the womb. You see, this is where there needs to be a pushback. This is where this is no longer about politics. This is not about left or right. This is good versus evil. Because these people want to run around and act like they're the protectors of children. They want to run around and act like they care so much about a child that children are the ones that are going to be victimized. They're going to be targeted and they won't be able to live their lives. Yeah. After you mutilate the children's genitals and then they grow up to realize that they've been sexually violated and manipulated to believe something that was probably just trendy at the moment. How do I know that? Drew, you sound like a bigot. Yeah, well, talk to the people that actually have gone through that. What about people that have gone through the transition surgeries, that realize that it was all a sham and a lie, and they hate themselves and hate their lives, but nobody on the left wants to talk to them. Why? Because it's an agenda, and they don't care about trans lives. That's the point. The same thing goes with minority communities. The same thing goes with the black community, the Hispanic community, anybody that begins to point out that this is all a political lie and agenda gets silenced, canceled, unheard, and that's how you know that these people don't give a damn. So I don't want to hear that these people care about kids. It's crazy because the event is called Trans Kids Cry for Help. Yeah, trans kids, children will cry for help if you're mutilating their genitals. It's not right. It's wrong. As a society, we have to have a standard of morality. The line has to be drawn here with the children. If you're an adult and you want to do whatever you want with your life, that's fine. If you're a grown adult, you want to run around and chop your genitals off and be mentally ill, if that's what you want to do, then you go live your life, dude. I don't really care. But stay the hell away from the kids. This is a very aggressive episode today, and the reason why is because we're dealing with little kids and adults that are advocating to mutilate the genitals of little children. That is pedophilic. I don't care what anybody has to say. And everybody knows it. That's why when Savannah shows up like that and she wants to talk to people, she wants to have conversations with these people, you ask these people. I challenge you, for the viewers, go to one of these things. Ask one of these trans activists, what does it mean to be a trans kid? They won't say anything. You want to know why? Because it involves mutilating their genitals, which is insanity. There very well should be investigations into parents that are doing this to their children. Why? Because how do you and I know? How do you look around you? Look at all these psychopath, quote unquote, activists that are willing to advocate for things like this. You think these people are mentally stable? You think people like that should be in supervision of another human baby, another human being? You think they're in their right mind to make some serious decisions for a child? How do you and I know that the child itself doesn't really want to do this, doesn't really understand it? But you have these SJW millennial leftists that want to chop their kids' genitals off, all for a political agenda. You think that that's not happening on the far left? Of course it is. And like I said, it's all about a political agenda. They don't care about the kids. They care about pushing their politics. And this isn't even politics. They care about pushing their depravity. That's what this is. That's a better word to use. It's disgusting. It's a shame. It's not right. And they won't talk to anybody because it is an evil agenda. Just call it for what it is. I'm not afraid. Especially truth seekers, centrists, conservatives, patriots, people that find themselves just loving America. You may not identify as left or right, but you see stuff like this and you're like, this is wrong. Don't be afraid to come out and push back and say it's wrong. They're already going to cancel you. They're already calling you a white supremacist. They're already calling you a homophobe, a transphobe, a bigot. They already label you as that, so you might as well come out and say, this is wrong. I will literally be more than glad to get canceled for speaking out for what is truth, for what is righteous, and for what is absolutely speaking out against what is wrong. This is where we're at. This is what they want. They want these children mutilated. And isn't it funny? I don't think it's funny, but isn't it interesting? And just think about this for a moment. Think with me, right? Isn't it interesting how these people always hide behind the so-called wishes of the children? Always with these people, right? It's what the children want. When was the last time you talked to one? Is this really what you want? It's what the kids want. The kids want this. The kids want their genitals mutilated. Yeah, that's not right. That's mental illness. Someone that wants to mutilate their body is clearly not in their right mind. And when we're dealing with children, this shouldn't be encouraged. We shouldn't be encouraging mental illness in the United States of America and cheering it on and praising it in the process. That's where you are in America. Total depravity. It's not just immoral, it's total mental illness, not only being pushed on the masses, it is being encouraged and it is being literally praised on a daily basis. But just continue to think with me. Don't you find it interesting that these people always hide behind the wishes, the desires of the children in the name of liberalism, right? My body, my choice. The government can't tell me what to do. I agree, but when it comes to mutilating a child's genitals, hey, we have to have a serious conversation here. It's evil. It's wrong. It's disgusting. Who the hell is going to sit there and advocate for something like that and expect not to be called a pedophile? Literally. But how far does this go? I ask you, how far does this really go? You might ask yourself right now, like, give them an inch, they'll be fine. It's really not going to hurt me or my family. Just, it is what it is. If parents want to chop their kids' genitals off, then, let them do that, to each their own. No. A lot of people say in the name of liberalism the same thing when it comes to slaughtering babies in the womb, and I take a stand and say no. Because we have to have a standard of morality in a society, because when we don't have a standard of morality in a society, we will eventually no longer have a society to enjoy, because good and evil is real. You can't get away from that. And at some point, evil is going to destroy, decimate the innocence in a society. And that's where we're going. You can't get away from that. I don't care what you believe in. Christian, whatever. Good and evil is still real. And if we cannot get behind protecting the kids, we have nothing. But like I said, they hide behind the wishes of the children, right? How far does this go? I guarantee you, we are living in total depravity, and it's going to get to the point where you're going to have these so-called activists out on the streets saying, children should be able to have sex with adults because the children want it. You think that won't happen? Look around you. They hide behind the desires of the kids. They claim it's what the kids want. The kids want their genitals mutilated, so we should be able to do it. I guarantee you, these pedophiles are going into the direction where they will publicly start calling out that children should be able to be in sexual relationships with adults. If you think that I'm crazy on this, look around you and wake up. It's called total depravity. You are living in it. Call me crazy now. Call me a conspiracy theorist now. But when this stuff starts to happen and unfold, I'll be here to tell you, not only I told you so, but you should have listened. And to continue to protect your kids. Well, here's Savannah's here's Savannah's Truth Social. She had that great footage, so make sure that you guys follow her. We're going to have her on the show. She's on another assignment right now, but we will have her on the show, obviously, in the future. She does great on-the-ground reporting. She's a reporter for Truth Social, a great friend of mine. She does amazing on-the-ground frontline work. Make sure, if you do have access to Truth right now, go follow her, and on her Twitter, it's the same handle. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Jussie Smollett saga and how he is literally a race grifter. Stay with us.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Drew Hernandez. Before we get into the Jussie Smollett saga, we all shop at the grocery store because we all need food, right? Food is a necessity, which means you have to buy it. What if you could buy the food you need and donate to TPUSA? Well, now you can with Good Ranchers. They sell 100% American meat, and they believe so much in what we do that they will donate $50 to TPUSA on your behalf when you purchase from them. Good Ranchers delivers steakhouse quality beef, chicken, and seafood to your door. And with our code, TPUSA, you can donate $50 to our mission while getting delicious food. They aren't like other meat boxes. Over 85% of grass-fed beef is imported from overseas, but Good Ranchers only sources 100% American beef. Their supply chain is honest and transparent every step of the way. Head on over to goodranchers.com/TPUSA today to get great meat for a great price while supporting us in the process. Get ribeyes, New York strips, gourmet burgers, and more. Order now with code TPUSA to get $50 donated to our mission, because now is the time to support American farms and ranches. Make what we do here and all over the country possible with one small purchase. Tell whoever is the breadwinner in your house to go to goodranchers.com, TPUSA, and get your box today. All right, Jussie. I'm going to call him Jussie, all right? I mean, Dave Chappelle dubbed him Jussie, so that's what we're going to go with. It stuck when I first heard it, and it's never going to go away. The Jussie Smollett saga, you guys all heard, it broke that he was sentenced. He got a slap on the wrist. It was like 150 days in jail, but over the weekend, sources told TMZ that Jussie Smollett is now claiming, I got jail time because I'm black. Okay? Not because he staged a hate crime, not because he took the entire country on a hate hoax ride along with him and lied to the American people. No, not because he commit crimes. No, Jussie Smollett got sent to jail because he's black. This is what TMZ reports. Jussie Smollett believes that there's one overarching reason he was sent to jail, and it's not because of the hoax. He says it's because he's black. Is that a surprise to anybody? I don't think so. Sources with direct knowledge and in constant touch with the failed Empire actor tell TMZ Jussie fully expected to get jail time. He told his defense team before sentencing he felt he would be treated more harshly than other defendants convicted of a nonviolent crime, all because of the color of his skin. He thinks it's more evidence of systemic racism in the judicial system. Jussie told his team after sentencing he was dead on when he predicted the outcome based on the anonymity the judge showed toward him. He called it unfortunate and sad. Excuse me, the animosity the judge showed toward him. He called it unfortunate and sad. What a joke. What a joke. He was sentenced to more than 100 days in jail, got a slap on the wrist. But here's the funny thing. The funny thing is this guy's a race grifter, okay? It's like everybody knew, Dave Chappelle was right, even the black community knew that this guy is clearly guilty. He's lying through his teeth. He's clearly lying. It was proven in the court of law, and it wasn't proven in the court of law because Jussie was black. Everybody knows that, but this is where we've been brought to in 2020. All the verified check marks on Twitter from the now VP of the United States. All of the virtue signalers on Twitter were taking to Twitter saying, this is a modern day lynching. This is white supremacy in action. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to a black person, just claiming that everything that happened to Jussie was literally systemic racism, and he was a victim of a modern day lynching. There are all the tweets. Remember that? They expect you to forget all that, by the way. An entire campaign behind a guy who was literally lying and grifting. Jussie Smollett is a race grifter. He counts on dumb black people to not pick up on his lies because he knows he can get away with it. Al Sharpton built an entire career over doing stuff like this. And successful, by the way. But Jussie Smollett tried to pull a fast one on the American people because, listen, during 2020, when BLM riots were unfolding, you had race grifters everywhere. Everyone was trying to get on the train. Everyone is trying to act like the next victim of white supremacy and the next victim of systemic racism. They want to be the next revolutionary figure that comes out of the 2020 race movement, trying to prove that everyone is a white supremacist, even if you're black. Right? This was like a thing. It's still a thing. You could literally build a career on being a grifting SJW, claiming that you're a victim of this ghost of racism out in the ether that really isn't as bad as they claim it is. You can build an entire career doing this on the far left, and they know it. Because Jussie Smollett is a failed actor. Everybody knows that his career was going down the tube. So what would be the next thing to do? Oh, let's just stage a hate hoax. I mean, the dumb black people in the black community are going to believe it. This is how they view you. They view you this way. These Hollywood elites, he walks out of the courtroom. Let's play that video right now. Here's Jussie Smollett walking out of the courtroom, claiming he's not suicidal, throwing up the communist fist while walking out. Play that.
Hardest journey. I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Yeah, black power, all you stupid black people that will just believe my lies. Listen, this is how they literally view you. Don't sit there and tell me that Jussie Smollett doesn't know he's a Hollywood elite. Of course he does. Don't sit there and tell me that you were imprisoned because you're black and the color of your skin. You were literally walked out the back of the courtroom without any handcuffs on. Why? Because you're a Hollywood elite. You got a slap on the wrist, and we all know that you got a slap on the wrist because you are a Hollywood privileged diva. It's exactly what you are. We all know that. Jussie Smollett is not a victim of a hate crime. Jussie Smollett is not a victim of systemic racism in the justice system. No, Jussie Smollett thinks that you're a stupid black person. Jussie Smollett thinks that you're a stupid white person, stupid brown person that's dumb enough to believe his fake hate hoax and dumb enough to believe that he got caught staging a hate hoax and thrown into prison because he's black. It's like, dude, can you possibly be dumb enough to believe these people? I think the answer to that, people are watching are like, yeah, there probably are a lot of dumb people that believe these people. Imagine being such a pampered Hollywood elite diva. You get a slap on the wrist after staging a hate hoax, and you still come out and say that you got thrown in prison because you're black. Come on, man. We all know who you are. You're a race grifter. You're a fake. You're a fraud. But I wanted to touch on this weird thing where he came out and he's claiming that he's literally not suicidal. The reports came out that he was put into a psychiatric ward. His brother came out and reported that this is happening to Jussie. Now, I mean, I don't disagree that this guy is probably mentally ill and out of his mind. I mean, to go as far as he went. But like that video we played where Jussie's sitting there saying, I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal. Two things. I have two questions, okay? What are you saying this, Jussie, because, I don't know, do you know something? Like, are there further things that you're involved in? Because the only people claiming that I'm not suicidal and that are afraid of, getting murdered in prison are people like Epstein, people involved with the Clintons, people that are involved with pedophile rings that don't want to, people will come and kill them in prison because they don't want them to come out and expose what's actually going on to, reveal the head on the dragon. I don't know, Jussie. You're in Hollywood. Are you involved in something like that? I'm just asking a reasonable question. It's not too far-fetched, is it, America? Hollywood elites involved in pedo rings? Jeffrey Epstein? Ghislaine Maxwell? Very clear, very out in the open. Why is he afraid of getting suicided? Why is he afraid of getting murdered in prison and he has to come out and tell the public, I am not suicidal? I'm just saying. I'm just asking the question. Or, Jussie, are you just being a diva? Is this a continued part of your grift and your act? And you know that there are millions of woke-tard black people, brown people, these white ally SJWs that just continue to believe this act that you've been putting on for the past few years. Is it that? I don't know. Being you, I could pretty much very well see that you could get away with something like that with these people because nobody questions you on the far left. They just believe your narrative. Oh, black guy says he's a victim, so I should just believe him. Why? Why? Especially even after he was proven guilty to staging a hate hoax. It's one of two of those things, America. I'm telling you right now. I mean, because it doesn't get past me that someone like Jussie Smollett is mentally ill. I clearly believe he is. But it's one of those two things. I'm really curious to see what he's really involved in. But also, we know that this race grift is something that's continuing. I mean, I could even prove it to you. The Post-Millennial reports that a student of color has been reportedly behind the racist graffiti at a Rochester's girls' school. Okay? Apparently she's Hispanic, but somebody wrote somewhere at the school saying this school is filled with a bunch of N-words, get out or else. And all of these activists were saying, it's white supremacists, it's white supremacists. And a minority from the school came forward and said, you know what? It was actually me. Listen, we are running out of so much. Listen, America is so racist, right? There's racism everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's a white supremacist at every corner trying to stop you. Racism is so bad in this country that black people and brown people literally have to stage hate crimes. Doesn't make sense, does it? No. It's actually, America is running out of racism that black and brown people actually have to stage hate crimes. That's the truth. Why, Drew? Why, Drew? Why is this happening? Because it is all an agenda, it's a grift, and they know it. Don't let these people deceive you, man. All the way up to Hollywood, to universities, on campuses in the United States of America, staging hate crimes everywhere. If America is so racist, please tell me, if America is so racist, please tell me why black and brown people have to resort to staging hate crimes. This is the clown world we live in, but it's an agenda and it's a grift. And I hope you're not getting deceived, America. All the viewers, I know you're not. Well, my name is Drew Hernandez. You are on the front lines. I will see you guys next time. TPUSA Live starts right now with the great John Root.
Hey, thanks a lot, Drew. Everyone, you're going to get some more Drew Hernandez here soon on TPUSA Live. But once again, welcome to TPUSA HQ in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. This is what we're covering today. First, Elon Musk wants trial by combat to settle the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and more in the daily briefing. Next, we'll tell you about how and why the Biden administration is responsible for the historic gas prices, not Russia. Then a response to Jussie Smollett, as Drew was bringing up earlier, having to go without Subway and the outside world for about 5 months. Finally, Motivation Monday, followed by YouTube censoring one of the most popular podcast videos the platform has ever seen in one last thing. All right, let's get this thing going. TPUSA Live from HQ starts right now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
You got it. We're here live at TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. Got a star-studded cast. It's good to be back. We had a little spring break.
Yeah.
Clearly you can tell. The Sun won this battle. Always. I think the Sun's undefeated against me.
Must be rough.
Yeah, it's not good, but I think I do keep sunscreen companies alive.
That's good.
I'll tell you that right now.
You've done well.
You don't need sunscreen.
No, I don't. Not at all. I got built-in sunscreen. Yes, indeed.
You lucky man. Also got Drew Hernandez. You're getting a lot of Drew today. What a good time.
Drew.
It's always fun. It's always fun.
And we're not done talking about Jussie Smollett.
No.
We're going to talk about that a little bit later. I've just got Isabel Brown.
Hanging with the boys.
Hey, let's go. Yes,
no one can hang with the boys like Isabel Brown.
Thanks.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Let's get you up to speed with some things you might have missed over the break, over the last few days. We're going to start with this. Happy anniversary. 2-year anniversary of 15 days to slow the spread. Boom. Not the kind of anniversary you were expecting.
Nope.
No, not really something to celebrate, Drew Hernandez.
I think it's. Here's the thing: if people don't realize by now that like we've been conned, we've been lied to, like this has been an obvious agenda worldwide, like I don't know.
I think they do. I really do. I've been doing so many posts about all of this, especially from airports where I refuse to wear a mask, and I'll make a little short reel about it and why it makes no sense. And I have a lot of people comment like, I didn't used to think this way, but I do now, or send me a DM about it. The problem is I think it's too late.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do about it at this point? We have let mass formation psychosis completely redefine what is reality in our country, and I think they're going to replicate this over and over and over again, not just for a virus, but pretty much anything they possibly can.
It definitely is a little too late, but there is times where I feel like you have prominent figures speak up that were pretty silent, or they were maybe ignorant to it, or they just decidedly didn't want to get into something too political, because we also have to always mention that COVID was politicized.
Oh,
it has been
100%.
politicized. It was a political tool. That also does not mean that COVID wasn't real and that people were affected by it. I think that's why so many people, especially on the left, they try to just crap on conservatives all the time. Like, oh, you just don't care about the people that have been affected. And it's like, sure, like obviously there's times where it's like you got to know how to protect yourself. Like obviously, like diabetes is a big thing here. Obesity, people have heart issues, and it's a real thing that we had to deal with, but there was more than one way to fight it.
Yep, absolutely.
And we actually do care about people. And we care about people so much we want them to keep their freedoms and not just give them up.
Yeah, I think my biggest hope with all of this, I went through some health issues the last couple months that had nothing to do with COVID, with my kidney, and had to have a big surgery. And it was just a big wake-up call for me at 24 years old. If I can do what I can now to take care of myself later on down the line, if I do get a virus, if I do get sick, it's going to make it a lot easier to take care of myself then when things get hard. And my biggest hope is that conservatives have really opened people's eyes to this idea of holistic health, of being really cognizant of what you put into your body, how much you're exercising, not putting yourself at risk for those things like heart disease and diabetes. And I didn't think that ever used to be a political message. I was in biomedical sciences in college, and that was kind of across the board what we knew to be scientific fact, but nobody's talking about that anymore. So I hope that people are waking up to that again. They're realizing the importance of how they take care of themselves now and setting themselves up for success later.
Yeah, telling people to stop eating is not going to make them a lot of money.
Yeah.
No.
So,
sadly.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on that because, especially when it comes to the fitness industry, and fitness is something I definitely push. So
really?
No kidding.
I would have never guessed. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen.
Fake news.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that we need to really take into consideration because a lot of comorbidities affected our health when it came to COVID. So expressing that to the Black community and say, hey, it's not racism, it's the fact that we're not taking care of ourselves the way we need to. So right on, we need to be more proactive when it comes to that.
And this next one here, this goes to show, like, you talk about the clown world, and we talk about just the crazy world we live in. Elon Musk, that guy just fires stuff off on Twitter, and it's amazing.
That man.
He's the world's richest man, and he called out Vladimir Putin, basically saying, I want a trial by combat. Look at this tweet. Saying, I hereby challenge Vladimir Putin to single combat, stakes or Ukraine. That's the world we live in. The world's wealthiest man called out Vladimir Putin after this Russia invasion into Ukraine and says, why don't we just draw swords? And then whoever wins gets Ukraine.
This takes me immediately to the image of Tyrion Lannister being like, I demand a trial by combat. Amazing. I love this man. He's like everything we ever needed and more.
Wasn't that also in the movie Troy where Achilles fought Boagrius? And it was like, okay, whoever wins this fight, one-on-one, whoever wins gets to control the army.
Well, he sent out Orlando Bloom, his character. And that's when I was just like, I'll take care of the pretty boy.
Yeah, I got that.
Maybe before the fight, he should start like memeing himself as a worthy adversary of Vladimir Putin, like riding the white horse, shirtless through a field. I would be really excited about these side-by-side images. It would be like boxing posters, like leading up to the big fight. Who are you gonna push?
I would love to see that.
This is what goes through my mind every day. Everybody, welcome.
These are great
Isabel's
things.
Thoughts. Yeah.
If you could have a trial by combat with one person, who would it be? And what are the stakes?
What are the stakes? Jussie Smollett.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Subway.
At 3 a.m.
Yes, definitely at 3 a.m.
In a winter storm.
In a winter storm.
No doubt. And we're gonna wrap up the daily briefing with Tom Brady is back.
He's back.
I'm not surprised. Are you actually surprised?
I am not very surprised at all because it reminds me of a Michael Jordan situation where it's like there's so much left in him. And The Ringer, the website that they have, I'm going to tell you what they called Tom Brady, but this was his tweet yesterday. He posted all over social media. These past 2 months, I've realized my place is still on the field and not in the stands. That time will come, but it's not now. I love my teammates and love my supportive family. They make it all possible. I'm coming back for my 23rd season in Tampa. Unfinished business. Let's freaking go. For me as a Falcons fan, I'm depressed. I thought, maybe.
I mean, is that new either?
No, that's not a new thing. It's been like 15 days to try to slow the other offense down. It hasn't worked either.
Yikes.
It's been really tough. But The Ringer, I thought it was so genius. They said it was exactly 40 days and 40 nights. And then he announced he's coming back.
Not know
he
that.
is the football Moses.
That's hilarious.
So good.
Oh my gosh.
Fantastic.
I have a theory that it's because the other day he went and hung out with Cristiano Ronaldo at his soccer game, football, I should say, and he saw that this older guy for the sport of other football can still make it happen and score 3 goals in one game. I can keep doing that. Who says I'm old? And so he decided, let's just do it.
Because Cristiano Ronaldo did ask him, just like, so are you done?
Yeah, I know.
And
I
like
think
that-
that really
it's like,
made
so,
him
like,
sit there and
for
think,
real?
like, I think I can keep doing it.
I mean, he's 44 years old. He did say before he wanted to play till he was about 45. He led the league in touchdown passes last year. And the Falcons once got no chance. I'm sorry for everybody in Atlanta. It's really tough. But another thing that's really tough is gas prices right now. Oh my goodness! I was just in Southern California this last weekend.
I'm sorry.
And oh man, I know that's a place that we've spent a good amount of time. And you look at those gas prices, and like you're seeing it some places, like in Hollywood. I know we got some photos of this. You go to a gas station. And it's over $7 a gallon. Look at that.
That's insanity.
$7.35 for unleaded.
$7.95.
My car takes premium, so I'd pay $7.95.
Yeah, that's West Hollywood right there.
5 cents less than $8. Are you kidding me right now? That is atrocious. But remember, people, it's Putin's fault. In case you didn't know.
Yeah, this whole thing is supposed to like really stick it to Putin, right? Like this whole this is President Biden's agenda to stick it to Putin, right? Even though it's been happening all of 2021 before Russia invaded Ukraine.
Just saying.
But did you guys know that Russia gas prices in Russia are lower than the United States?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Like that's
it's almost like when you
mind-blowing.
sell it, it affects the people who buy it from you a lot more than the person who's selling it.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
It's good to be energy independent as a country. Is that a good idea or not?
I would think so. I mean, we proposed that.
Did we have that at some point?
We did.
Did we?
Yeah, we were going towards that
No,
direction.
they want you to forget the last 4 years.
Well, they want you to forget the last 4 minutes. Like these people,
That's true.
they are so far up their own butt. Like, sorry, I can't even phrase it another way. That they legitimately believe you will not remember 5 minutes ago with what they just said in a press briefing or in an official proclamation from the Oval Office. Are you kidding me? And now they think that you're so stupid that you won't put 2 and 2 together, that us not buying from Russia, but yes, buying from Venezuela isn't going to immediately turn around and go back to Russia. Like every day just gets a little more astounding to me, where I have to ask, are people this stupid? And I think the sad answer is yes. People are this stupid because nobody is saying anything.
It just makes me think of Men in Black, where it's like you just had something happen, and it's like, bring it up, erase. No, because it's like, hey, if the President of the United States can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago, neither should you.
Apparently,
it's only fair.
Whoever they is having a lot of fun with nobody remembering anything. Maybe dementia is the new pandemic of the United States, and it's contagious and just affecting us all. So that's my hypothesis, scientist Isabel.
What'd you do last weekend, Mr. President? I don't know. We did it, Joe.
I'm the president?
We erased it.
I'm the
president?
Oh, wow. Why didn't you tell me?
Give me a minute. I need to get my coffee. I just woke up from a nap. All right. But speaking of blaming this on Putin, there are some crazy lefties that are going on TikTok. They're going on social media, and they are flipping out. And like this person here that tries to put all of this on Vladimir Putin. Good. Check out this video. This person's insane.
Look at the price of gas now. It's $7.55 a gallon. Hey, Putin, we're sending you a bill.
We're sending you a bill, okay.
That's like, when I see that, it's like the NPC's update is successfully installed. It's crazy.
Updated.
It's like COVID's gone, now Putin bad guy. That's the new narrative. Ukraine good guys. Don't think about anything else. The gas prices are high, but even though they've been skyrocketing all 2021, it's Putin's fault because he's invading Ukraine. It's like, it's so easy.
It's
so easy.
I saw the best tweet about that. That was like, I'm so excited to announce I'm retiring from my position as an infectious disease expert. I will be moving on to being a foreign policy expert on all things oil and gas. But that's true. It's like a system software update.
It literally is. And these people, they get the update, they take to the streets, and it's just like, no thinking, just speaking. The narrative's installed, it's there, and it's just crazy, man.
How do people keep falling for these narratives? Because at first it was COVID, and we had to shut down schools, we had to shut down your kid, we got to shut down people, we got to shut down everything in the world because of COVID. Not because of us, because we're feckless leaders, but because of COVID.
Because of life or death. That's the way.
Exactly, because you're going to kill grandma.
Yes.
You're going to kill grandma, right? And we don't want to do that. And then now we're here with this narrative. Oh, it's all Putin's fault. Never mind the fact that this has been happening since he basically jumped into office. Never mind that. It's all narrative driven and people are falling for it. Because you have those people who are only looking at MSNBC, CNN, all these different news channels, and they believe everything that they digest from the daggone news.
But even MSNBC is admitting this.
Yes,
they're even saying that, like, hey, like let's check out the charts here. Like when President Biden took office, look at how it's just gradually going up. And then like the invasion of Ukraine, it's like, boom, it's just gone up like maybe like 30 cents or so like on average, but it was already at pretty much historic highs, and they're admitting that. So
finally,
that's another aspect I think of people waking up. It's too late in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of people that if President Joe Biden and VP Harris, if they taught a class at a university, it would be distraction and deflection 101. Because they are experts at that, and then they would bring in the special speaker, Jen Psaki.
Oh, good.
So she would come in as a sub, and
That's a sub.
that they are an expert at that field of study.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable.
Clearly.
And this all goes back not even just to basically the first day, as you said, Stephen, to like the first 20 minutes of this presidency when they canceled expansion of the Keystone Pipeline. Then they made it illegal to practice any drilling for oil on any federal lands, which is a huge issue nationwide. Regardless of what you think about the issue of oil and gas, I think everybody is starting to come around at this point and be like, hey, I don't think we're ready for universal electric cars yet. I don't think that makes sense at this point in time. Elon Musk, our hero, our best friend here on the show today, even came forward and said, even though it would hurt my business a ton, it makes way more sense for us to become energy independent through oil and gas right now at home than try to convert the entire country to electric cars. I think, call me my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory moment.
Put mine on.
Everybody put it on.
There we go.
We keep saying we're going to fashion real tinfoil hats, and we never do. I think we need to get there.
That'd be great.
This all seems to be a bit too coincidental for me. It almost seems intentional of setting something up for, oops, we can't buy oil from Russia anymore because they're evil and they invaded Ukraine. Oops, we have to get rid of cars and we have to get rid of everything that's fueled by oil and gas at this point. So that maybe it's another area of a way that they can control you. And I saw a lot of people talking about this on social media where everybody was taking me back to the beginning of the pandemic in the state of California, where else, of course, where they were threatening to turn people's electricity off if they didn't comply with early pandemic regulations. What's to say at some point the manufacturer of all these electric cars that they want us to go buy with our $70,000 laying around couldn't say, hey, your political opinions weren't acceptable today. Your car's not going to start for 3 hours.
And
or,
literally
hey,
what you're saying, that's Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Boom.
And so it's just like insane to me that we've gotten to this point. We've talked about the worst case scenario, I think, for about 2 years now. Like, what's the worst that could happen with the government taking over every aspect of society? And early on, people were throwing out, they could cut you off from your bank account. They could take away your ability to buy a house. They could destroy your credit. They could take away your ability to get a job or to communicate with the outside world by censoring you on social media. We're there. So what's the next logical step? They take away private property. They don't let it be functional for you to start your car.
The next step is people going to Mexico. That's what people are literally doing right now. Did you hear about that?
I did,
people are actually like fleeing the United States to go get some gas in Mexico and then hop right back over the border.
And ivermectin too, probably while they're at it. Pharmaceuticals and gas, baby.
That's when you know it's
Mexico.
That's how crazy it is.
That's why sometimes I'm like, I hear Trump say build the wall, and I'm like, it sounds like a good idea if we're on the right side.
Right side of the wall.
Because if I'm in America and I'm experiencing a tyrannical psychopath government, maybe a wall's a bad idea.
How sad that you're asking that
I'm going to be
question,
trapped.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm just saying.
Just putting it out there. Come on now. Tell the truth.
I'm just saying, man. I mean, because like, this is where it's like, how is it that Americans are having to resort to going to Mexico for cheaper gas prices? But what Isabel is saying is 100% true. It's the Great Reset. That's what it is. They all talk about it, Build Back Better, the Green New Deal agenda. It's all wrapped in one. They want people desolate. They want people desperate. They want people dependent. They want people just literally sucking on the teat of the federal government. Essentially what they've done to the black and minority communities, they want to do to the world.
Come on.
And that's exactly where we're going. And I think the past couple years, the masses have been groomed to accept medical tyranny, to accept tyranny in the name of safety. We have to sacrifice these freedoms because we have to be safe. There's a greater good. You shouldn't care about your freedoms because there's a greater cause and a greater good. The mass formation psychosis, this has been underway for the past couple years. So any agenda they push forward now, the masses have been groomed to accept it. It just is. That's why you're seeing people like that on social media that believe the woke-tard narrative, and it's all Putin's fault. It's whatever they throw out there now is just going to be eaten up.
And I actually think it's important to note this is longer than the past few years, too. And I say this a lot, and it doesn't gain me a lot of popularity points within the conservative movement, but the left is really, really good at playing the long game. And we are not. We think immediately about, there's an election coming up. We should probably start thinking about that and doing things about it and posting on social media about why conservative values matter. The left has thought about this for decades upon decades. That's why they infiltrated the education system. That's why they're infiltrating entertainment, the church, the government. Every aspect of society in our country has very slowly, almost as if it wasn't even happening, one step at a time, been taken over by the left's woke agenda. And I think ultimately it was to get to this end point. And it happened so slowly and on such a minuscule basis that people didn't even realize it was happening right before their eyes. And now all of a sudden people are waking up and saying, how on earth did we get here? It's because we didn't care in the moment. It was small enough and inconsequential enough that we just thought, whatever, we'll just let that happen. Well, this is what happens when good men sit down and say nothing.
Not just on the left, on the right.
Yeah.
You know who else plays a long game is China plays a long game. And you think about aspects of people like communist China. Like there's leftists out there. I know Morgan shared her story at American University where it's like it just starts seeping in there a little bit. It's a little bit it's like democratic socialism. Like, oh, that sounds kind of nice. Like we could change this up a little bit. I don't like the racism in this country. There's not enough equality or equity. Like just little bits and pieces. And then you know what? Like you said, we're always on defense all the time. That's what I love about Turning Point USA though, because we're playing with an urgency.
Yes.
And we're on offense. We got some Tom Brady's on this team. All right? We're going back. We're not retiring. We're coming back. Let's go, baby. That's what we're doing. Also, there was another aspect of, I feel like there's times where things get so bad you almost have to laugh. Not to just make light of something that other people are going through, but the insanity of the people that live in this country. I saw a video of this lady. She had these grocery plastic bags. Grocery plastic bags.
Speak on it.
You can barely even have like your half gallon of milk without that breaking. She is filling up these grocery bags, plastic bags, tying them up and putting it in the back, the trunk of her car. This is like the same people that are just like, pandemic, get all the toilet paper, all of it. It's like, how often are you going to go to the bathroom?
Because
she's like, well, what are you eating?
You need 4 masks and a face shield.
Clearly.
For a virus, but you can use those flimsy plastic bags with holes in them for gasoline in your car.
Perfect sense.
I hate people.
Totally safe.
Totally safe.
That's times where it's just like, say a prayer for that person and invite them to church.
Yeah. Y'all need Jesus out here.
They definitely need some Jesus. But something that was great from producer Braden, one of the many people that does a great job helping put this show together, he said, we've always heard build back better. It's like we're definitely not building. We're 100% not back. And Lord knows we are not better. And this is build back better. I don't want it.
Build back never.
Exactly. But we're going to take a quick break. Good friends at Good Ranchers got a little something. We'll see you guys in a second.
Good Ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
We're back, baby. MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, Drew Hernandez, Isabel Brown. I'm John Root. Jussie Smollett.
Hey, the French
has to go 150 days without the outside world and Subway. Poor guy.
Brutal.
I'm gonna let you take this.
I can't. I'm so appalled by this. Because I saw something from Taraji P. Henson, his castmate on Empire, and she was like, "Oh, hashtag free Jussie." I mean, come on, free Jussie? She said that the punishment didn't fit the crime. Well, in our case, we understand it doesn't fit the crime because what he did was egregious. It's atrocious. He's putting back race relations with a hoax just so we can increase his national profile, his acting profile. Are you freaking kidding me? But remember, white supremacy.
And for people that forgot, like obviously he said that he was going out at around like 3 a.m.
Clearly.
When it is like it was almost like 10 below zero.
Yeah.
You're basically in just a winter storm. It is freezing out.
Mm-hmm.
He said he was going to get Subway. And that someone is also out at the same time, which is basically like crossing the Arctic at this point. It's just like, that's why I know you brought up, oh my gosh, Dave Chappelle. It's like when he pretended to be the officer. So yes, Mr. Smollett, I tell you, 3 a.m. So negative 10 out. Okay, and your sandwiches?
Sandwiches?
Got to get sandwiches? Okay, and then someone came up with a red hat, and they said, "This is MAGA country." He's like, find out where was Ramirez last night?
What was Kanye last
night? That was just such a great breakdown because it was asinine, the story that he told, and obviously there was accomplices here, and then I think the judge in this case was so based.
Mm-hmm.
This guy absolutely went off. He called him arrogant, a narcissist, a hypocrite, attention-seeking. He even used the phrase, you wanted to make yourself more famous and you craved the attention. And that's all it was about. And he's craved the attention throughout the entire trial. And even when he got sentenced, you could tell, it was all about Jussie Smollett.
You know, there's a bad word in the minority communities, and it's this word accountability. And I think that whenever you throw that word around or whenever you execute it, for some reason, these communities just want to point the finger, they want to accuse you of being a racist, they just do anything and everything they can to get away from accountability. And I think the worst thing that we can continue to do to these communities is continue to let them just play that race card, accuse everything of white supremacy, accuse everyone of being a racist anytime someone tries to simply hold them accountable for doing something wrong. You can't only just not do that to minorities. You shouldn't do that to anybody.
Amen.
Because now you're going to create an even worse human being that thinks that they're not accountable to anything in reality. They live in their own reality. He's already a Hollywood elite, but this is a huge problem in these communities. And I think if we continue to allow these people to get away with this kind of stuff, it's only going to make these communities worse. And we have to hold people accountable. Like, it doesn't matter what skin color you are. If there's real racism, show me. I'll be right there standing with you to oppose it. But we can't just give this guy a pass because he's black.
Yeah, like every true American says, if I see racism, I'm going to fight against that. With we had a war. We had a civil war. We're just like, you had people from like, they looked a lot different, and they were on the same side. They're like, I don't want this. I want people to know that like everyone is created equal under God here in this nation, and I will fight and die for it. And then I know you mentioned this on the show. There is so little racism that they have to come up with racism. How sad is that? And that's what the judge ended up saying too. He said, you were preying on these fringe people that desperately want to agree with the 1619 Project, CRT, Ibram X. Kennedy, all these race baiters. They are preying. He is preying on those people and say, look at how bad it is. And not only using his blackness, but being a part of the LGBTQ community. He utilized that as well.
Yeah, you know, John, I like how you characterize this judge as based, but I also don't like it at the same time. My parents are both attorneys. I'm considering going to law school. I think the legal profession and the justice system is maybe one of the most important pillars of our society as a democratic republic. You shouldn't need to be called based if you're punishing someone for committing a crime and saying that your actions caused harm to the community that you're in. How did we let the legal profession and the justice system get this far, or even just suggesting, hey, you did something wrong to a black person who committed a crime makes you based?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we have devolved as a nation, especially when it comes to the justice system in that regard, unfortunately. So it's time that we, like you said, you know, self-accountability and responsibility. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, we need to promote that and push that. But you have these people with this woke agenda that are trying to push everything but that and try to say people. I was just at the Florida State University and I was talking with this young liberal lady, white lady. And we were having this conversation, and she was just so ensconced in this idea that I'm oppressed and that she had to make excuses for me in my community and this and that. And, oh, you don't understand. Well, what about this? What about that? It's like, goodness gracious, I'm telling you what it is. We need to hold our feet to the fire. I know what's right and wrong, just like you do, just like you do, just like you do. If I do something wrong, that's on me. That's not on you. That's not your fault. It's not based on you and the color of your skin. It's on me. I need to hold myself accountable. We need to do that within the black community. But people like Jussie Smollett, he thinks he's above it all. This guy lives in privilege. Are you
Isn't
kidding
that so
me?
like condescending though?
It
Like,
is.
somebody just sitting there and just trying to tell you, no, wake up, Steven. I'm trying to tell you what it's like to be black. It's like, what are you talking about?
That happened when I was in college all the time. I remember when I was working for the admissions office, which was the worst place to work on campus. I got in trouble so much, you guys, when I worked for the admissions office. I wore like the little khaki shorts and gave tours to all the prospective students at Colorado State University. And I actually got a formal complaint written in my file because I dared to address a group of people as you guys instead of something a little bit more gender neutral. But similar concept. We were in one of our all-staff meetings, and there was a young woman who worked with me on staff who was in the engineering department, and we were talking about privilege, and the instructors, who were also women of this like mandatory meeting we had to go to, were screaming at this girl that I worked with who was a female in engineering that she was oppressed because she was a female in engineering and it's largely a male-dominated field. And she said, well, I'm in all the same classes. I'm getting all A's in these classes. I got into the program. I'm going to graduate with the same degree. How on earth am I oppressed when I'm doing all of the same things? Well, you might not see it in your daily life, but because you're a woman, you carry that oppression all the time. And it's the exact same thing when
100%.
whiny white liberals tell you, Steven, and I'm guessing she was quite a bit smaller than you and probably couldn't really pick a fight, but she was picking a fight saying, nah, sorry, everything you got going on, nah, you're oppressed, family.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that? I'm afforded every opportunity that you are and the rest of us are. Every black person can achieve greatness just like anyone. Jussie Smollett is a prime example of achieving greatness. He went to private schools. He had acting lessons. He was on the freaking Mighty Ducks. Are you kidding me? As a kid, I wasn't on the Mighty Ducks. He was.
Movie, yep.
It's unbelievable, but that's how it is when it comes to the promotion of this idea that we can't rise above, and anything bad that happens, even if it's a punishment for something that we did, it's automatically classified as systemic racism, and you see that in grand fashion. And he's proof of that. He is proof of the type of person that promotes this idea that it's everybody else's fault but his own. Systemic oppression, systemic racism, all the like. It's ridiculous.
But I think it just goes along the lines of like what's going on in society is people tell themselves lies so much it becomes truth. I'm sure I would actually have to believe that a little bit, that he's run through this so many times, and he's an actor himself, that he's almost playing a role.
Method
like
acting.
that's
Exactly.
what it seemed like when he was putting up the Black Power fist. He's saying, I am not suicidal. And he's
dramatic.
It was just like, what a performance that was. Like, I never really watched Empire, but man, that was...
I have something to say about this I am not suicidal
Greg Britt.
comment. Okay. Who is going to kill you in prison? Who? Name one logical person that's going to come after you for committing a crime against yourself.
And I think he's on the right side with the Clintons, so they're not going to get
Well, yeah. So if your whole thing is, I'm not suicidal, but I'm saying that because I fear somebody's going to kill me, I feel like it's like a reverse Epstein situation where if he dies in prison, the only logical case based on his criminal track record is that he did it to himself, and then they're going to try to blame it on somebody else. There's going to be memes that come out about this if this does happen, and I hope that it doesn't. I hope he doesn't lose his life. That it's going to say Jussie Smollett did kill himself versus the whole Epstein didn't kill himself thing. That is the most pathetic, attention-grabbing, power-seeking, woe is me little comment there I have ever seen in my life. Like, get through your 150 days without Subway. You'll be fine. Good Lord.
And I'm really glad he's wearing that chin strap, too. It's so important.
Very, very important.
He's protecting people.
He's definitely trusting the
Saving
science.
grandma.
Praying hands. There you go. You know what? It's a grift, dude. I was saying this on the show earlier, dude. Like, these people know that they can manipulate a bunch of black people, brown people. They know that this is a brand, is what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Like, you play the part, you say the right things, you do the right things, you use your superstardom to. It's like the Colin Kaepernick just in Hollywood, you know, like in a different version, but. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he could manipulate.
Speaking of Colin Kaepernick, though, did you see what he tweeted out the other day and posted?
Or he's been training?
Yeah, he said he's been training for 5 years. And, like, stuff for me, it's like people like Adam Schefter, he's a senior ESPN football insider over there. And it's like, you're posting this stuff. It's like, it's been 5 years. This guy had an opportunity. He was given opportunity after opportunity. Like, especially, it was about a couple years ago where you had, I think it was about 5 NFL teams that were saying like, hey, we're going to meet you at this field. And he changed the venue, changed the location, everything. And he's acting like he's oppressed. He's telling everybody the NFL Combine, they poke and they prod. And this is like the slave trade. It's just like, give it up. Like, stop. And no one cares about like race baiting. You are already someone that is going to be a PR liability. Plus, you're a liability after you take the snap because you threw it to the defenders a lot more than the guys on offense. All right, you had a good run. You had a good run.
Did he though?
No, he did have a good run. He was pretty good at Nevada,
decent, yeah.
and then ended up bringing the Niners to the Super Bowl. Had some success there. The Hard Bowl wasn't able to make it happen, and then the league figured him out, and then it's all of a sudden racism. Like it's sad because there's people that really buy into this kind of stuff with Jussie Smollett and Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
These people are tearing us down a lot more than building us up.
Yeah, that's why it's important for us to call it out when we see it. The hypocrisy is right in front of your face. You were talking about it with all the race hoaxes and all this sort of thing. This is right in front of your face. We have to call it out because they have no problem with tearing America down. They have no problem with it at all. And I think that's their intention, is to tear America down, especially when it comes to race relations. So I think it's important for us to really call out this foolishness whenever we see it because it's not doing anything good for the United States of America. I mean, race relations, especially between white and black, is going downhill really fast and really quickly unless you jump on board with the CRT, critical race theory, oppression Olympics, intersectionality, all this type of stuff.
The right black.
The right type of black, okay? Because of course I'm not the right type of black. Goodness gracious, but we need to call it out.
What was it, like politically black?
Yes, Nicole Hannah-Jones said there's a difference between racially black and politically black. Lord have mercy. How is that not racist in and of itself? That I'm not the right kind of black because I think differently than you? Are you kidding me right now? You really want to go there, Miss Nicole Hannah-Jones? I want to debate her. Let's set this up.
I'd love to watch that.
That's why I'm glad you brought up earlier, though, how there's people in the same circle at Empire that's saying like free Jussie.
Yes.
This is not just on Jussie.
No.
This is on other people that are sending out that hashtag that says free Jussie.
Thank you.
It is up to people to be sharing the truth, and we live in such a dishonest society that. Like, how is history going to remember this? Yeah. This might be, look what's taught in schools right now. 1619 Project, a lot of the CRT, a lot of nonsense about, there is no way that we, found reconciliation at all. We're still as racist as we've ever been. And people like Jussie Smollett might be remembered as some sort of black or LGBTQ hero.
Well, and this is bigger than one court case or one football player even. This is across the board with the entire race conversation in America right now. Ibram X. Kendi, best-selling author of Anti-Racist Baby, which if you too, as a progressive parent, want to raise your kids right, you bought on Amazon, making it a bestseller. His real name is Henry Rogers, okay? The founders of BLM are buying multi-million-dollar homes for themselves with guarded security gates because they want to defund the police, but not for themselves.
Patrice Cullors.
Taking all of this money in and committing fraud, but they're heroes. They are the martyrs of the movement that everybody has to get down on their knees and worship. Every single person leading this conversation is a liar. I don't even know how we got to a point where across the board, the entire thing is a lie. The entire thing is a hoax. Forget about just Jussie Smollett. Look at everything across the board. At what point does history turn around and say, yeah, actually, you guys are all lying? Versus you're the literal heroes saving our society, which is what's going to be written about them in the history books.
But one place you can get the truth is Young Women's Leadership Summit.
Hey.
You can get it from Isabel Brown, Alex Clark, all the great contributors we have here, and a lot of great speakers. It's going to be an awesome time. We're going to take a quick break, checking that out, and then we're going to be right back. So, actually, we're not even going to check that out.
No breaks.
What I'll tell you to do is go to tpusa.com/YWLS, and you can use promo code John, Jon.
Don't use promo code John. That's committing sins against women because of the patriarchy. Use promo code Isabel for a discount on your YWLS registration.
I know, women, you can do anything you want, but if you really want to get 50% off, this man can help you out. Jon.
Or you can help out the black community and
use any of our names for a discount, but it's going to be awesome. YWLS is always my favorite event every single year. Sorry, men. I know that's probably hard for you to hear, but it's really fun.
I have a good time.
And I think there's genuinely nothing like this on the left at all. There's no conference that actually celebrates womanhood. I went to one leftist women's conference ever in college, and it was awful. Like literally from moment one, it was the worst experience that I've ever been to. I wrote about it in my book, and immediately after that, while I was in college, like the week after that, I went to my first YWLS, and ever since that has been my favorite event every year. I think it is so inspiring for the next generation of women. And now that we can't even seem to define what a woman is, it's very, very needed in 2022 and beyond.
Speaking of what is a woman, I cannot wait to go to Atlanta, Georgia this weekend. They have the Division I NCAA Women's Swimming Championships.
I didn't know you were going.
I am going.
We talked about this like months ago.
It's going to be incredible.
It's going to be something.
And it is absolutely insane. I don't know if anybody read the Sports Illustrated article
about
that, where it's like they turn this whole thing into just like the only people that disagree with this are just like fringe people on the right and President Trump supporters and all this, where it's like, no, like what we're trying to do is protect womanhood. And I feel like because we have YWLS, we can actually define what is a woman and how you can be a woman that's making a difference in society, because they look at people like you and Alex Clark, Morgan Zagers, Aaron Elmore, Kendall Jones, Paige Rue, all the great contributors we have here, all the women that we're associated with here at Turning Point USA. Those are people you should listen to.
Thank you, John.
And if you listen to a man, it should probably be a real man. It's not having a gender dysphoria situation. Motivation Monday. This is the first time we've ever done this, and I think especially taking a little bit of a spring break here, and then you come back after the weekend, there's times where you're hearing so much pessimism, you know, and it's hard not to be living in the society and not be like, all right, what's the ulterior motive behind this? Or like, can I really trust this? I think there's times where we can bring a little bit of optimism in here, and we're gonna go ladies first.
Oh, I was gonna say do reverse feminism at the end. I'll go first, it's okay. What do you want me to share with people, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think just something like just a little, I think Freedom Seeds was always great too. I love that. It's just like a little easily digestible, like here's the truth, here's what's going on, something like keep people, you know, maybe have better conversations, live a more prosperous life. What do you got?
Well, you know, I've been thinking a lot about all of this lately, and I think spring break was really nice last week. By the way, a petition to have that all the time for adults. I think that would be a genius remotivation starter.
Amen to that.
So I hope you're listening, boss. Anyway, I've just been thinking so much about the impact that I want to make as a content creator, that we all make as a community. And I'm looking around at the state of affairs in our country, and it feels really overwhelming and negative, and like you're emptying the ocean with an eyedropper sometimes. And that's the hardest feeling in the entire world, trying to get truth out there in any way that you possibly can in a world that is rejecting the very concept of truth. But last week, during my spring break, I worked, which was not very much of a break, but that's okay. I went and spoke at the National Religious Broadcasters Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was the first time I ever attended that event. It was awesome. It was very, very cool. And it just kind of...
Skillet was there, right?
Skillet was there.
Love them.
John Cooper, the best. He spoke on the panel right before me, so that was awesome. But it just dawned on me that this is bigger than politics. This is bigger than right versus left. It's bigger than whatever party you're registered to vote for or who you cast your ballot for every November. What we're seeing in our country is even bigger than a culture war, which is what we talk about all the time in the conservative movement. This is a spiritual war for the soul of America. And we talk a lot about hearts and minds, but this is getting down to our very soul, and we are living in a world that is destroying that every single day, which is very, very sad. So it's overwhelming and it's scary, but before I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, and I like to say that if I wasn't being hated by the world and it wasn't hard every day, I probably wouldn't be doing the right thing, because the Bible says over and over and over again, this world is going to hate you and persecute you when you dare to fight for what is good and true and beautiful in this society and in this world that's progressively going to get worse. And we know, it sounds doom and gloom, but it's actually not, so bear with me, I'm coming around. We know that in the end, humanity can't save America. Humanity can't save the world. Humanity can't save the souls of each other. Only Jesus Christ can do that. And so I think that was really helpful for me this last week to think about. It took so much of the pressure off and the weight off of my shoulders to be like, you know, my job and our job as the conservative movement isn't even to save our country. We talk about that a lot, but it's not. Our job is to just tell the truth every day in whatever way we can. It could be one tweet. It could be putting out a show like this every day. It could be having really meaningful conversations with people you disagree with. But just do what you can with the tools and the gifts that you have been given, and I promise you we will be going in the right direction.
And there's times where we screw up too, where it's like we want to tell the truth, but it's like, oh, you know, there might have been this little information that I missed here or there, and then that sense of accountability where it's like, all right, I can freely admit this, like let's get back to the truth. And then we're going to show this little graphic before we go to you, Steven, for Motivation Monday. And this is what kind of got our wheels turning. I know Charlie Kirk ended up posting this here. It says, I'm just not ready to accept that everything I believed was a lie. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way right now, and it's just, I think there's a little bit of me, like I try to empathize, but not in the sense of like getting taken advantage of. To where there are some people out there who are just like, I can't believe that the past 2 years I've been lied to when it comes to race relations, when it comes to COVID, when it comes to how much I can actually like trust the government or any official, local to federal. And I think there's times where people, it's like, all right, this is the cold, hard truth. It's gonna be tough to swallow, but it's time to unmask yourself, live your life.
I agree. I mean, I 100% agree with that. I mean, my motivation is definitely towards the minority communities that when it comes to living a lie, when it comes to the prevailing notions of lies and manipulations and deceits, understand that you are not a victim. You can do whatever you set your mind to, daggone it, and that's what it really boils down to, is how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to succeed? And I was talking to that young lady, she kept saying every excuse, with this circumstance or that circumstance or the government or this. It's like, okay, but how bad do you want it? Because you're going to college, you're doing what's necessary for yourself. Why can't I do the same thing, right? So it's just getting people to understand that you can do whatever you want, especially when it comes to the gym. A lot of these dudes, people I met in the black community in these gyms, and I'm like, look, your body is on point. Why? Oh, well, I spend hours in here, and I lift this and I go hard. I'm like, okay, apply that to your actual life, okay? The same, way you go at it with sports, basketball, football, whatever. Apply these same principles to your actual life, the discipline, the tenacity, the grit, the hard work, all these, the good work ethic, all these things, apply it to your actual life and see your life improve. You're not a victim. No one's trying to put you underneath their thumb. You can do whatever you set your mind to if you just work for it. And that's what we need to get people to understand and motivate people to understand that they are indeed victors.
Love that.
My goodness.
I love it, man. I mean, like, what do I say?
All these things now.
I think just for me, I think I'm just going to be honest. I think my biggest struggle is balancing out, like, as a Christian, like I've been theologically trained, could exegete the Bible, this and that. But I think my biggest struggle has always been like balancing truth, mercy, justice, compassion, finding that middle ground, discernment, and being accepting, real tolerance as a Christian. I think finding that middle ground is hard for a lot of people. And I think for me is, having conversations with people that hate me, or people could watch my old school YouTube content on like Lives Matter. Like that was all I was doing, is having conversations with leftists and like the most crazy left-leaning protests. But my goal was always to like really just talk to this person and like really kind of bring them to a different way of thinking, so they could maybe possibly even think for themselves for a change. So I think for me is finding these strategies to look at someone that is reprobate, wayward, evil, still find it in your heart to, meet them in the middle, to have a conversation with them, but at the same time, be on your guard, uphold the justice. I think that's a real hard balance to find, as especially living in 2022 as a content creator, like she's saying. But I think for me, I just want to make it a point to say that, people on that side, or whatever we want to say, that find themselves on the different side of things, is like, if you find yourself in this position where you're waking up to things and you're seeing things don't add up, and you're realizing you're being lied, not just from the left, but from the right too. If you're coming to this realization, you need to understand that, because I think you look at theologically, you see the fall of Lucifer, right? It was pride that did it, right? And pride is going to be that core issue that stops a man from accepting anything good, true, or righteous. And I think a lot of people that are coming to this place in their hearts, not only with Christ and the gospel, it's like, you got to get past that hurdle and just bend the knee and submit. But when it comes to like waking up to what's happening right now in our world, just be humble, express that humility, just be like, it's okay to say that I was wrong. It's okay to say like I was lied to. We've all been there, right? We've all been in that place where it's like, damn, I have been deceived, dude. Like, that's a good place to be. That's not a bad place to be, because now you're starting to pay attention.
And also, it's tough to have that righteous anger, because there's times where people, I feel like, especially too, if you're like Christian and on the right, you feel like, you know, I'm kind of on this moral high ground a little bit. We always talk about how the left tries to do that. The right does it a lot as well too. It's like there is certain things that we got to know. Like the only way you can know what is of God is by being with God.
Yep.
And just like you were saying, it's just like you got to train your body. There was this aspect of I'm reading the Bible again in a year. And you just start reading stuff. You're like, oh, I kind of missed that. It's like, this is not just like a Harry Potter book that you read and you're just like, all right, I know the story. It's like there's times where you talk about people don't even understand what exegete that means. Like it actually like is getting down to the like, what does this mean in the context of when this was written? Like, what does the Greek say? What is this whole meaning to it? Not just a eisegesis, which people try to do. It's like you read something, you're like, oh, what does that mean to you? It's like, well, it doesn't really matter what it means to you. What are they trying to say here? And I think for Motivation Monday for me, I said when we had New Year's resolutions, my word of the year was serve. I think there's a lot of times where, and I'm not talking about serving yourself. There's a lot of times where I can do the same thing. I'd be fairly selfish, where it's like, oh, I'm doing a service project or I'm doing something for somebody else, but like I want a little reciprocity. Like I still want a little something like, well, what am I going to get out of it? But if there's really a true servanthood that you can get into, I don't care if that's with your family, your friends, significant other, workplace, doing something and not expecting anything in return, you will feel way more filled up than all the likes or comments or followers you could get on social media when you're actually serving other people. And there's different aspects of that that you can figure it out. Like I think for you, like growing like even more as like you now have 100K.
Let's
go.
Let's go.
Like,
Come on, go.
Like, I think there's a service to that. Like obviously you're getting like a response where it's like there's more people that are going to follow you and there's going to be more, you know, opportunities out of that. But like actually just seeing that is like I'm posting this video because I'm providing a truth and I'm providing that service, and then just let God take it and run with it.
It's a huge responsibility too, and I think we forget about that a lot. It's really nice to have a bunch of followers or a blue check mark or whatever. I mean, that's fun. We talk about that a lot as creators, but it's a big deal. You are being tasked with telling people either something that's going to fill them up and make their life really fulfilled, or something that's going to tear them down and leave them feeling empty and confused and questioning what's missing in their life. And I think the movement in the last few years has done a really good job with the truth part. We've done a really good job telling truth to the world, but where we've been lacking, what my hope is for everybody on this couch and just everybody in the movement, is that we can learn to speak truth in love again, and that we learn how to couple that moving forward. Because right now, I think especially when we look at Gen Z, who is such an emotional, reactive generation, not necessarily for a bad reason, but because their entire life has been marked by tragedy. They were largely born around 9/11, saw school shootings and war throughout their entire childhood, and then came into adulthood with COVID-19. They're a very reactive generation, and the left is preying on that, utilizing emotion to manipulate your response to everything. If the right can learn to speak truth to the next generation, to fill them with all of the things that are going to make them joyful and happy and fulfilled in love, using emotions to do that, I think we're going to make a lot more of a difference than we have in the last several years. And hopefully that responsibility of speaking truth into people's lives becomes just even more rewarding.
I should have told all you guys to get the paper and pen out and start taking notes. Well, I'll remind you when we do Motivation Monday again, but we're going to take a quick little break, get a message from our friends at Freedom Square, and then we're going to be back for one last thing. Don't go anywhere.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Welcome back to TPUSA Lab. MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, Drew Hernandez. I'm John Rood. That's Isabel Brown. We got time for one last thing. If you just missed Motivation Monday, you're going to watch the rest of the show and then come back. Hanging with the boys.
Always.
Hanging with the boys.
Know it.
And speaking of the boys, the Nelk boys.
Yep.
I don't know if you're one of those people that is really into YouTube stars and big creators. I mean, they have popped off. Like they have such a dedicated, massive following. And I wouldn't call them Christian boys at all. I don't think they would be saying some of the same things we said for Motivation Monday, but those guys just do a great job building a brand. And they've been able to sit down and have conversations with people that a lot of young people aren't able to do. And that's what's like crazy is how these total almost like frat crazy boys can sit down with Donald Trump and have a conversation at Mar-a-Lago.
In like sweatpants, by the way, while he's in his classic blues.
And the name of their podcast is the Full Send Podcast. If that's not the most bro podcast I've ever heard.
That's awesome.
Fun fact, I actually wanted to call Breakaway Full Send.
Oh, really?
When we were first like putting together like some pilot episodes, and then I saw that Full Send was trademarked by the Nelk Boys. I'm like, all right.
Smart boys.
Dang it.
But basically what happened is they sat down with former President Trump, talked about everything. He talked about Ukraine, talked about his relationship with Putin, and it had over 5 million views, I think, in the first, like half an hour or something like that?
It was like first day, I think,
first
was
day?
when it got to 5 million.
And we're going to show you a little snippet of this. It was great stuff, and it's unlike any interview you guys have ever seen with President Trump. Check it out.
YouTube removed the video. I guess if your name's Donald Trump, you get canceled. If you're an Ayatollah in Iran and you threaten to wipe Israel off the map, you don't get canceled. Maybe you can explain that to me.
Well, it's the Nelk Boys, and I was asked to do that by a tremendous guy named Dana White, Dana White of UFC, and he said, would you do an interview with them? And they're hot as a pistol, and they have, like, I guess the top show or something. And so I did it, and we had a lot of fun. It was a half hour or so, and it became very much a sensation. I guess they had 6 million hits in a very short period of time. It was the #1 they've ever done. And then I told them, I said, don't worry, it'll be taken down.
So obviously that was President Trump on Hannity, but the interview, you got to check it out because I think it's on nelkboys.com or fullsend.com.
And podcast platforms too. I think it's still on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, if you want to check out the video form, you can go to those websites. But I mean, that's basically exactly what Sean Hannity said. It's like your name's Donald Trump.
It's that simple.
Deplatform.
In the interview, President Trump actually said, yeah, this is going to get taken down in about 24 hours, boys. And they were like, I don't know. We'll see how many views it gets. Almost exactly 24 hours later, it gets deleted, and they posted the screenshot on their Instagram. I think everybody said, that didn't take long. Yep.
It's predictable.
Yep.
I mean, it's shocking that we saw a sitting U.S. president just silenced within minutes.
Yeah.
And like, it's just a podcast like this that's more like cultural than like political. And I think my hope is that people that are more cultural and less political see stuff like this, and it kind of like rubs them the wrong way. It's like, why are you shutting down one of my favorite podcasters over the former president? Like, this is kind of pushing people to wake up that this is kind of going in the wrong direction, because it's not just political podcasts that could be silenced. It could be a cultural podcast that brings on the wrong political figure, and then you lose your favorite cultural podcast. Like, see, this affects everything. It's not just the political sphere. It's across the board. And we talk about Gen Z. I just hope that they pay attention to this kind of stuff.
I feel it. I mean, if you can censor President of the United States, former President of the United States, you don't think that they'll come after you? You don't think that you're next on your little platform in comparison to who the President of the United States is or former President of the United States? You really think that you won't get knocked off just because they feel like it? Because you violated their terms or whatever terms that they arbitrarily put forth that you're supposed to adhere to, but they're very ambiguous, when it comes to it. So you don't really know what you can do and what you can't do. So it's typical. I'm not surprised. But we all know that when it comes to this type of censorship, it all goes one way.
You talk about them like trying to just cancel misinformation. Like they believe in cancel culture in that sense. And it's like, if you want to get rid of misinformation, Jen Psaki's lying to you every single day about inflation and gas prices. VP Harris is lying to you about the supply chain and what's going on at the border. President Biden has lied to you about if you get the vaccine, you won't get sick and you won't get COVID.
And
like
Barack Obama. What?
Yes, exactly.
Barack Obama's
Right.
got COVID. Like that is real misinformation, but that's why they're so effective with this stuff. It's like, no, we need to fight against Donald Trump. Like that is public enemy number one. And if we have him in power again, that's when it's really going to go to hell. We're in hell right now.
Cancel culture is only going to escalate. It's so much bigger than removing one YouTube video or shutting down your platform. These people are out to take away everything from you. Your bank account, your assets, your private property, your family. They don't even want you to have a family anymore. This is going to get a lot worse before it gets better, so strap in because it's going to be a wild ride.
Woo! And then that's why it's like, when you see this stuff, like probably download it, clip it, and then send it out on your own. We talk about that all the time at Turning Point USA. Like, utilize your platform to share this stuff. I know Project Veritas does that quite a bit too. They're like, hey, this is probably going to get taken down quick. Download it, send it out to your friends. Drew Hernandez, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, Isabel Brown. I'm John Root. Coming up next, UN Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. See you tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. And yes, as you can see, we are back in our Capitol Hill studios. Today's top stories. First up, a ground war update. What's happening on the ground in Ukraine as the war enters day 19. Next, a story out of The Economist. We need to break this down. What is going on with this foreign fighter, the Ukrainian Foreign Legion Battalion, and are people starting to desert the effort, the volunteers? Third, President Biden's executive order on cryptocurrency. A lot of people are overlooking this thing. We're going to dig into it. And then finally, the Florida anti-grooming bill passed by Governor Ron DeSantis. All this and more ahead. Human Events Daily. All right, what is going on the ground in the war in Ukraine as we enter day 19 of this conflict, the Russo-Ukrainian war? And we are using ISW for this. And I saw some people out there saying, the Institute for Study of War, they said, PUSA, why are you using this? Isn't that a neocon source? Isn't that someone who's like super, biased, super anti-populist, et cetera? Look, it is. And that's my point. This is the most neoconservative take that we can find. But that also means they are pulling their punches in terms of what's going on. Because I don't want anybody coming here and accusing us of saying something that wasn't true. So this is the side that, if anything, it will de-emphasize stuff that would be considered a disinformation narrative. So today's update from them, an assessment. Russian forces have again conducted ground offenses on March 13th, only securing new terrain in Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces predominantly took measures to restore combat readiness and regroup combat units as of noon local time, March 13th. Russian forces continue to assemble reinforcements and attempt to improve logistical support in both the Kiev and southern operating directions. Russian forces may intend to resume large-scale attacks on both axes of advance in the coming week, but will likely take longer to cohere the combat power necessary to complete the encirclement of Kiev. Russian forces, now we haven't seen a direct offensive operation northwest of Kiev for the third day in a row. Russian forces did not conduct attacks in the northeast and prioritized, again, reinforcing their lines of communication and logistics routes. That is what you're seeing. Now, one thing that we did really take a long look at yesterday when I was digging in, really going through the map on this, was the siege of Mariupol. And the idea that Mariupol, again, on the border there, right on the coast, is essentially encircled by all three sides by Russian forces, and then water, of course, on the Sea of Azov. With Russian forces, though, we were able to track a few tank units and battalions that were going down through the middle river that just basically bisects the city of Mariupol. Why were they doing this? We're now reporting early this morning that Russian forces are trying to cut Mariupol in half to essentially create a humanitarian corridor where they say they want to get the civilians out. Now, of course, the Azov battalion, that is their major, again, Sea of Azov, that is their major headquarters in the east. So this city is going to probably see some of the most brutal fighting. Now, we do also have a video from, of course, our austere commander-in-chief. Let's listen to him.
Although we will not fight the Third World War in Ukraine. Putin's war against Ukraine will never be a victory. Democrats are rising to meet the moment, rallying the world on the side of peace and security. We're showing the strength and we'll never falter. But look, the idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III, okay?
So I'm a little confused at President Biden's comment there. So he says that this idea that we're going to send MiG-29s and fighters into the fight, it's ridiculous. Well, but wait a minute. They're saying this. Well, who's they? It was your Secretary of State who was saying this. And we talked about this all last week. We called it the NATO hot potato, right? And that the Poles were the ones who got out of it. They were like, yo, not I, right? They say, you want the MiGs? We'll give the United States the MiGs. We're not going to give offensive weapons directly to the Ukrainians. Now, that being said, the United States is continuing to deliver Javelin missiles. The Ukraine is giving their version, the NLAWs. These are anti-tank guided missiles. We've seen them used to great effect along this with these really light infantry tactics that we're seeing from the Ukrainians. You might call them guerrilla tactics in many cases, the way they're able to employ these. There are a few videos coming out over the weekend. But understand that we're still seeing a situation here, we're going to talk about this in the next segment, that is growing incredibly dire. And so we do have talks that are going on right now between Ukraine and Russia, and we hope that this fourth round of talks, which hold their virtual talks today, we hope that this will bear fruit. We don't want these sieges to continue. We don't want to see a Battle of Kiev. We don't want to see further fighting in Mariupol. We're also told today that Biden's controversial national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, who's caught up in a few scandals himself, is meeting in Rome with China's top diplomat, the top diplomat of the entire CCP, Yang Jiechi. This is the guy who ate Tony Blinken's lunch in Anchorage. I don't think it's going to go very well for the Biden administration in Rome today. All right, now we've been hearing a lot about these foreign fighters coming from the West, coming from places like Brazil, going over and joining the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, the National Territorial Defense Force of Ukraine, this international brigade. President Zelensky, of course, put out the call for this very early on, I think really just one day into the war. Here's that clip.
Everyone should help us to stop this occupation. Ukrainian people deserve to become member of the EU, and this would be a signal of your support to Ukraine. If you can destroy the occupiers, please do it. Everyone who can come back to Ukraine, please come back to defend Ukraine. Everyone who can defend Ukraine abroad, please do it. Do it directly in a united way. Every friend of Ukraine who wants to join Ukraine in defending the country, please come over. We will give you weapons.
So how do things fare for these volunteers? What's actually going on the ground there? Well, we saw a report yesterday and we woke up on Sunday morning that Russia had actually bombed the very barracks and the base outside of Lviv, all the way in western Ukraine, that these volunteers were using. We're told 35 died in that attack. The 35, the Russians say they were volunteers. The Ukrainians say it was just Ukrainians, right? Obviously fog of war and a lot of this stuff. But that was the very base where these volunteers had been arriving outside of Lviv, very, very close to the Polish border, only within about a dozen miles from the Polish border. Then this was the same area where a lot of those weapon shipments, those Javelin weapon shipments were coming. And Russia told us that those would be targeted as legitimate military targets. So this is something, again, where they are making good on their warnings. But an incredible story in The Economist. And I know, they're going to say, Poso, why are you reading The Economist? Look, I thought this was an incredible story. The guy is clearly actually there in Ukraine and in Poland to do this reporting. And so this comes out over the past couple of weeks. He followed a few, as a reporter, who followed a few of these Western recruits going in to Ukraine, going to join this international legion. They go first to, and it's useful and has a lot of utility for us to understand this process, right? You have to understand the process. You have to understand the way the system works. So here's the system. Guy shows up at the Ukrainian embassy in London, says, I need a place to go. He gets a name, he gets an address of a hotel on the Polish border, buys a ticket to Krakow, flies from London to Krakow, heads over there, gets in a car, drives all the way to this hotel. It's called the Hotel Cicada, right on the Polish border. And they've got a sign up that says Foreign Legion. And at this hotel, as you can imagine, it is just packed, chock to the gills. Mercenaries, aid workers, prostitutes, humanitarians, journalists, adrenaline junkies, hippies, just everything under the sun, beer flowing, instant coffee flowing, just craziness, right? People barely sleeping as they are all trying to figure out how to do one thing, how to cross that border to get into Ukraine, right? So he finally gets across, they saddle up, gets over, goes through 6 checkpoints before he's able to make it to this Ukrainian base. Obviously, they have to worry about infiltration, lots of other things like that. Gets to bed around 3 a.m., gets woken up at 8 a.m., And this is a guy, by the way, who had served as a medic in the UK military. He'd served in Iraq and a few other places in humanitarian operations. And so he says, look, I think I could use my services for, my skill set for helping with these refugees, get them across. And they say, no, we're not going to be doing any of that. You there, and there was a British anarchist there who was also with him, and some Bulgarian who just said he wanted to kill a bunch of Russians. They said, all right, here's how it goes. You get 3 days of training. Day 1, we teach you how to read a map and use a compass. Day 2, we teach you basic medical first aid. Day 3, you get your gun. We're going to teach you how to use it. Day 4, we're sending you to the front lines. You're going to Kiev. Oh, and by the way, here's this contract. The contract says that you will serve with us until the war is over. And the guy's like, wait, until the war is over? Well, who declares when the war is over? Oh, don't worry about that. We decide. 3 days of training, and then you head straight to the front lines. The guy left. He spent only 9 hours on the ground in Ukraine, and many other of these people are leaving. This is even before the attack that I just talked about, because obviously this reporting was done before the attack. This is a very dire situation. If you're planning to go and get involved in something like this, understand the risks. This is not Iraq or Afghanistan. These guys aren't Syria. This is a professional military with drones, with precision-guided missiles, with air superiority over vast swaths of the terrain. You are going to be going up against actual fire units of the Russian army if you get involved in something like this. And you are fighting, right, in Eastern Europe. You're fighting on territory that they have been fighting over for hundreds of years. Understand the risks. Understand what you're getting into. This isn't a game, this isn't Instagram, and this certainly isn't Reddit. Massive bomb cyclone this weekend. I've been talking about these. I've been saying go to mypillow.com, use promo code POSO. We even have the whole launch page set up. You go right there, mypillow.com/POSO. And I said, make sure that you're all bundled up because these bomb cyclones are coming. Guess what? This weekend, I was up visiting family in Pennsylvania. We got caught in a bomb cyclone. And I really mean it was a bomb cyclone because it went from like 70 degrees on Thursday, right, in the Northeast, to about 20 degrees on Saturday. And we tried, by the way, I wanted to take Jack sledding. I said, come on, let's go do this. I went out with my brother. We get out to the hill. We're at the top of the hill. And, we're about to go down. We've got my dad's old toboggan out, the one that I used to go down when we were all kids. He would put the whole family together and we'd go down on this thing outside of Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And this wind is just like smacking us in the face. I mean, it was intense. We've got a couple of videos of it, but it was so bad that I'm like, look, my son's 3 years old. He cannot be out here. So we took him home, wrapped him up in my pillows, wrapped him up in the blankets, wrapped him up, put him on. We've got, like, of course, the Bible pillows for him. Put him on. He was so much happier to be at home, bundled up in his My Pillow stuff, rather than outside in the bomb cyclone. So it was like all of that stuff that I've been saying again and again, it finally came true. And it came true for us. And luckily we had our My Pillow supplies. So that's what you do. mypillow.com/POSO. President Biden has put in a new executive order on cryptocurrency. If you are out there, if you're a coiner, right, or even if you're a no coiner who's interested in understanding, what is this crypto stuff? You've heard about it, you've read about it. Elon Musk tweets about it constantly. What is it? What does it mean for you? And how does this EO affect it? Here's CNBC with their take on the situation.
What they're saying is that this is responsible innovation. President Biden will sign this executive order today, calling for just that in the crypto industry. The White House is directing a government-wide audit of the risks and potential benefits focused on a list of 6 key priorities. And those are consumer and investor protection, financial stability, illicit finance, U.S. competitiveness, equity and inclusion, and a host of other factors like privacy, security, and climate.
And now Zero Hedge had a really, really good analysis of this whole thing, broke it down, because what they were talking about isn't so much the order itself, but what the order means and the fact that this clearly now sets out a guideline and a roadmap for the future of crypto and the future of finance. Look, I think we all understand that the US dollar as the world reserve currency is not long for this world. We don't know how long that's going to happen. We don't think that's a good thing, by the way. It'd be terrible for the United States. So how do we stay fiscally solvent? How do we protect the money of the people in this country who live paycheck to paycheck, who have less than $5,000 in their bank account and their checking account? What do we do for those people? How do we help them? How do we make sure that those people are cared about? And it's not really our elites who care about this, because they're the ones that have been pushing inflation. They're the ones, and by the way, I've seen people say, oh, well, the inflation is because of the stimulus bills. Wrong. The stimulus checks that came out were a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of quantitative easing and the money printer that the Fed was giving to all of their buddies for all this great reset stuff, this ESG crap, BlackRock, Blackstone, all their buddies and the elites at the top. But here's what Zero Hedge says. Central bank digital currency. That's where all this is going. Digital currencies are set to play a leading role in the future of finance. The mandate is unequivocal. It is not to say that everyone and everything in digital will win. To the contrary, the message is more about embracing the technologies for the strategic betterment of America than accepting the current state of play in areas like DeFi, decentralized finance. Digital asset technologies are transformative in how we transfer value. It has the potential to level the playing field in all markets as the lines between traditional and native digital assets become blurred alongside a broadenization of tokenization. We welcome the strategic initiatives. Look, digital is here to stay. Keep in mind, right, that a lot of the US dollars that are out there, now you ready for a mind bender, already are a form of digital currency in the form of a token. What does that mean? Well, that money in your bank account isn't cash that you can just go and pull out. That's on a ledger somewhere. So the Federal Reserve and our government are working to figure out a way to combine that with crypto. Will it screw up? Probably. It's the government, after all. Well, Governor Ron DeSantis is set to sign an anti-grooming bill in the state of Florida. What does this mean? That means discussion or teaching on sexual identity and gender identity will not be done to children under the age of, or under, grade 3 or lower, grade 3 through kindergarten, right? This is an obvious move, an obvious common sense move. And the only people who would push for sexual education, right, for children of that age, probably a groomer. That's why we're calling it the anti-grooming bill. Now, of course, the mainstream media is saying something else. They're saying, oh, no, it's the don't say gay law, right? But it actually doesn't even say anything about that. What it says is we're not going to be teaching this stuff to children. We're going to let it alone up to a certain age. And then after that age, maybe we'll talk about that. But that's not what Jen Psaki said, the White House press secretary. Listen to this.
Well, I think that you have seen the president speak passionately about his view that a bill like this, a bill that would discriminate against families, against kids, put these kids in a position of not getting the support they need at a time where that's exactly what they need, is discriminatory. It's a form of bullying. It is horrific. I mean, the president has spoken to that. In terms of his views and comments from 25 years ago, I think the most important question now is why are Florida leaders deciding they need to discriminate against kids who are members of the LGBTQI community? What prompts them to do that? Is it meanness? Is it wanting to make kids have more difficult times in school, in their communities? I would pose that question to them, and we can talk about it more tomorrow if you get an answer.
Now, the reasoning behind this bill is simple. Let children be children. Let them understand their own childhood. This is not the type of stuff that they should be learning at such a young and impressionable age. They should be learning the alphabet, how to read and write, how to count, right? How to put together basic sentence structure, arithmetic, basic math, addition, subtraction. You see so many adults, by the way, like people here in Washington, D.C., don't even know math, right? They can't even, calculate percentages. I remember learning fractions in third grade, but here in Washington, D.C., they'll put, the spending bills, $14 billion for Ukraine that they just find overnight somewhere, but you can't find any other money anywhere else when it comes to the defense of this country. It's an interesting question. Why is it that people in D.C. can't do math? Well, it's because they don't actually focus on this stuff. They focus on things like gender studies, and that's the only thing they focus on for pretty much their entire lives. Also what they're forcing on our military. And so what Governor DeSantis is doing here, it's not an attack on anybody. It's a protection. It's a protection on our children, and it's a protection on our families, and it's setting up our society for a better future. Stop indoctrinating children and messing around with these types of topics. They're very complicated, they're very advanced, and they don't need to be learning that. Look, my 3-year-old watches PJ Masks, right? You know, we teach him his prayers, teach him basic nutrition, why he should be eating his vegetables. That's the stuff that you should be teaching children, not this kind of stuff. Because what are you setting themselves up for? What are you setting them up for? What is your actual agenda if this is what you want to push on children? Well, I think it's pretty clear. And that's why we call it an anti-grooming bill. It's also one of those great things like Antifa, right? Well, if you're against the anti-grooming bill, what does that make you? All right, and that is all the time we have tonight on Human Events Daily. Today's top stories were, we talked about the ground war update, day 19. We talked about foreign fighters, the volunteers deserting from their posts, fleeing from Ukraine. Third, we talked about President Biden's new executive order on cryptocurrency. And finally, we talked about Florida's new bill set to be signed on anti-grooming, the grooming of children in public schools. And as always, our promise, our oath, our solemn vow to you is to be good, be brief, be gone. This is your hardest hitting, highest action-packed analysis and information, not indoctrination, that you'll get anywhere else. But before we go, it's time for today's history break. Today, in 1964, the world's first televised verdict, jury verdict, was given. What was that trial? It was the guilty verdict in the trial of Jack Ruby. Who was Jack Ruby? Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, who we're told shot JFK. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
All right, welcome back, you guys, to Freedom Papers. I'm not alone this time. Connor.
Hey, good to be here. Great to be back.
Oh, and I like your outfit today. You look great.
Thank you, man. You too. I like your shirt.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you tell that I enjoy having Connor on? You guys, we are still on the same topic that we've been on for quite a few episodes now. We're still talking about the failures and insufficiencies of the Articles of Confederation. Last week we did 18, so what do you know? Shocker here, we're doing 19 today. And it's called, once again, The Same Subject Continued. But this is another special one, Connor, because it's Madison and Hamilton combined. I kind of like that about this, when you can tell. But they did a good job of making Publius's voice sound as if you can't tell who's writing it in the first place. I just think it's cool when you know that both of their minds went together on these papers, because a lot of them were written individually. This
like
one...
Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg coming together, like a collab.
Sure.
We just watched Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah. I kind of knew what was going on with that. I felt kind of young and hip. Kind of young and hip. I just, honestly, I don't want to go on a rant right now, but I think it's pathetic that we as a society are obsessed with celebrities and athletes and all these people. Like, I think it's fine to love their music, watch their movies, whatever, but why are we obsessed with everything that they do? The pop culture of it's kind of nasty. So
totally agree.
I don't really watch the Super Bowl or anything. I think it's all related to the fall of Rome, but I digress. Everything I send, I should say this, everything I send to you on Instagram, I'm like,
Has to
does
do
this
with the
remind you
fall
of the
of
fall of
Rome.
Rome or what?
And sadly, it all does.
Okay.
Anyway.
But last episode, Connor, you were with me on 18. We talked about some more ancient examples of confederacies not working because Publius is trying to show how they've never really worked throughout history. It's not all working in America right now, so why would we continue this? Last episode was about the ancient examples. Now we're going to talk about, from the founders' point of view, in 1787, what were some of the more present examples they were seeing on the world stage. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Germanic body. So we'll get started with just how Publius introduces this. He says, the examples of ancient confederacies cited in my last paper have not exhausted the source of experimental instruction on this subject. There are existing institutions founded on a similar principle which merit particular consideration. The first which presents itself is the Germanic body. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't know much about the history of Germany. I feel like we don't hear much about it before the 20th century.
They kind of get pigeonholed into one sort of, 4 or 5 year period there, Germany.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting. And so I figured we could just kind of go into this because he breaks down the history of it, the more ancient history of that space, of that land, Charlemagne, and then how they transitioned and tried to fix itself, but why it just can't seem to get its head together. Now, I don't know what kind of lessons you got out of this. I haven't really talked to you about this before we started filming this one today, but I got this message of mediocrity. And I think that's what you guys are going to see too. If you read number 19, whether you already have or you're going to do it after this episode, it's this message of, well, yeah, I mean, it hasn't fully fallen apart, but it's just a terrible situation.
Yeah, it's not doing great.
It's more so of this internal rot that is structured enough so that it doesn't fall apart and collapse completely and get invaded and just completely deteriorate, but it's internal rot that has led to this mediocrity and suffering of the people, and they just can't get out of it because there's structure but not enough structure for positive reform in the government. So I thought that was a really cool lesson because what Publius has said for a lot of this is our Articles of Confederation or whatever the Anti-Federalists are proposing is going to lead us to civil war or invasion from foreign powers or all of these terrible, insane situations where we're going to have massive suffering. But this is more of an example of, or it could just be this massive, extended centuries of mediocrity and long-term suffering where nobody's really happy and nobody's really getting anywhere.
Yeah, it's like it could all just kind of suck, right? And I think that's a really good analysis of it, frankly, because that's exactly what we were dealing with. We've heard previews in some of the previous papers about these confederacies about Europe, right? And I think this is the first time that they dive into these in detail. Your book is falling apart, Morgan. God bless you. She just caught like 6 pages under the desk. This is the first time they've actually gone into detail about the kind of actual, confederacies that they've been previewing this entire time. And it's not good. It's not terrible, but it's not good, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually really interesting to dive into because the history of Germany, like we were saying earlier, German history always gets pigeonholed into World War II, right?
Yeah.
But everything that we know about German history in World War II, it's all completely, it makes a lot more sense when you know the context of all of the Germanic states, right? I mean, from Hitler's invasion of Poland to his obsession with Austria and the Anschluss and all these things, all of it makes sense whenever you actually read back into, what they were doing back in these days, in the contemporary days of our founders. So it's a really good, really good paper. Interesting. It's one of the niche ones that they're probably not going to teach you about in school. So that's what we have freedom papers for, right?
Gosh, no. Because I got so many good lessons out of this, and I've been kind of excited for this episode because right before I read 19, I was looking back into my paper, and for those of you who have listened to all the episodes, the Federalist Papers version by Charles Kessler is my favorite one. So it's this one. It's like $7.95 on the internet or at your local bookstore. I have a sticky note here from when I read the introduction by Kessler. And I said, the founders built our government to expect bad behavior because of human nature, but provide opportunity for human excellence. And that really sets America apart. What I got exactly from the opposite message of that was in this paper 19, where it had some protections because you allowed for sovereign states. You didn't have this tyrannical ruler, but the tyrannical ruler the leader at the top, he didn't have enough power to have tyranny, but there wasn't any structure, and so you didn't provide for the potential of human excellence. You just kind of had this blah state. So I thought that was perfect timing for me to just have read that intro again. Now, I want to get into the history of Germany and what you said, Connor. you hit the nail on the head. Because World War I, World War II, a lot of it was caused by all of these small states. And if there's one big lesson we've learned from all these papers, it's the fact that small neighboring states are going to constantly have problems.
Yeah.
One's going to be weaker, one's going to be stronger. You're going to have problems over time. So that's the whole point of having a union of sovereign states in America, to get us working together so that we don't have things like a World War II happening on our soil.
Right.
That being said, Europe is messy, and our founders knew that back then in 1787. Look what happened with World War I and World War II. It was chaos. You had all these small states that were invaded or fighting each other, and it is exactly what the founders predicted might happen in American soil. So I thought that was kind of full circle to bring it all together in this paper, because they had no idea what would happen in the future in Europe when they wrote this in 1787. Now, Publius goes into talking about Charlemagne. And for those of you guys who don't know, he says basically Charlemagne was this leader at the top. He was the emperor of Rome.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get all of this messed up because there's some big words in here, but he's the emperor of Rome. There were all of these different tribes and different groups of people in what is known as the Germanic body. And as Charlemagne's sons came into power, Connor, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but as time passed on from when he was the emperor, things started to break down a little bit. And you had these new and more powerful sovereign bodies throughout the land that were able to compete with each other. So you had this kind of top power that wasn't as strong as it used to be under Charlemagne. And it led to the states being able to compete with this higher power that was supposed to be leading all of them and bringing them together. And it made this very interesting situation. So Publius says that these individual sovereign states that were technically supposed to be controlled by this higher power gradually threw off the yoke and advanced to sovereign jurisdiction and independence. The force of imperial sovereignty was insufficient to restrain such powerful dependence or to preserve the unity and tranquility of the empire. So there wasn't enough power at the top to get all of these states to continue to coordinate, and so the power of the states actually became more so than this entity at the top that's encouraging them all to cooperate, and it led to some problems.
Yeah, totally did. Well, and the one thing that kind of sets the Germanic folks, the Franks and the Poles and all these different Germanic folks, apart from the other kind of confederacies in Europe, was they had this sense of, and this is one of those inherent things, they've always had this sense of self-assuredness, right, would be the word for it. So whenever you talk about the infallibility of men and how our founders predicted that man was fallen, the Germans had a different view. They felt that they were always, very vastly superior, and they never accounted for the fact that you're going to be dealing with, weak, fallible, broken men. And so they didn't set up guardrails because they didn't feel as though they needed to. And then they got completely run over by themselves, right, throughout this confederacy of states. And that's ultimately what ends up leading to, not to keep bringing it back to this, but it's the natural progression of things. That's ultimately what ends up leading to the world wars, is because Germany wants to reclaim their honor on the world stage. They want to reclaim this idea that they are the Übermensch. It's all very Nietzschean, right, and influenced by Friedrich Nietzsche once you get into the world wars. But that's a historically, fundamentally Germanic idea of just superiority, and the idea of the Aryan race was actually co-opted from Persia and the Middle East to become this idea of like racial superiority. I mean, it really goes back to the Germans have big, big heads, right?
Interesting.
At the end of the day, and they think that they're tough guys, but they're actually kind of just drunkenly, disorganized messes. Well, nowadays they're very, very organized because they learned their lesson, right? The Germans, their trains run on time, their clocks are always tight. They're very, very tight, clean, and neat. Didn't always used to be that way, though.
Yeah, I mean, back then, so Publius, after kind of saying what initially happened after Charlemagne's reign starts to wind down, he says the most furious private wars accompanied with every species of calamity were carried on between the different princes and states.
Right.
The imperial authority, unable to maintain the public order, declined by degrees till it was almost extinct in the anarchy, which agitated the long interval between the death of the last emperor and so on and so on.
Yes.
And so just the decline of the higher up power, that's supposed to be like that federal government bringing everybody together. If you compare it to what America's Articles of Confederation is, it slowly declined. The states started to rise up in power, and like we've talked about in other papers, some states are more powerful than the others, and what do you know? They end up fighting over ridiculous things.
That's right.
So then he goes and says, out of this feudal system, which has itself many of the important features of a confederacy, has grown the federal system which constitutes the Germanic Empire. Its powers are vested in a diet representing the component members of the confederacy, in the emperor, who is the executive magistrate, with a negative on the decrees of the diet, and in the imperial chamber and Aulic council, 2 judiciary tribunals having supreme jurisdiction in controversies which concern the empire or which happen among its members. Now, this is the big lesson, one of the big lessons from the papers. He goes on to talk about the powers of each of the bodies in government, the powers of the executive, and what all the roles are between the states and that higher form of government. But then he says, for such a parade of constitutional powers in the representatives and head of this confederacy, the natural supposition would be that it must form an exception to the general character which belongs to its kindred systems. So he's saying, now, after I've just listed all these different powers, all of this separation of powers, checks on powers, different roles that the federal government has versus the sovereign states, you'd think that they'd be pretty squared off and not facing the problems that you would generally assume throughout history with a confederacy. But oh no.
Right.
He says nothing would be further from the reality. The fundamental principle on which it rests, that the empire is a community of sovereigns, that the diet is a representation of sovereigns, and that the laws are addressed to sovereigns, renders the empire a nerveless body, incapable of regulating its own members, insecure against external dangers, and agitated with unceasing fermentations in its own bowels. He then says,
which is beautiful, but that's probably the most beautiful sentence ever written about bowels.
I was like, where are you going with this?
In my opinion.
Yeah, so what do you think about that? Because I totally see that, and again, it's that message of mediocrity.
No, it is. And they built up a system that they thought was perfect in a lot of ways, and then they realized that it really actually wasn't, and they couldn't control through their strong, what they thought was strong, central government, the feudal system that they had in place. They couldn't control their people. They couldn't control really, frankly, anything, but they really thought that they were high on the hog. And then, you fast forward a handful of years, next thing you know, you've got Napoleon in Austria, and then you've got the Catholic Church just coming over and taking all these things. And this is a very, base level historical assessment of the, Germanic Empire. But the reality is that they just became kind of complacent in a system that didn't work, and it ultimately led to their downfall, right? They were not able to do what the founders were doing at the time and say, hey, the Articles of Confederation are not working right now. We have to rethink them. They refused to. They were stubborn and they didn't do it.
Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting. What was so cool, I love the tidbits, I like the random historical facts. I'm really nerdy in that sense. So he lists out a few of the examples of just how ridiculous this system was, even though they had some rules written down. It looked good on paper, right? Well, in reality, it turns out in one of the conflicts, the emperor himself was put to flight and very near being made prisoner by the Elector of Saxony, so one of the states.
Right.
So one of the states was so powerful that the leader of it decided to attack the leader of all of the states and try to jail him. That was just one of the problems. Another was that the late King of Prussia was more than once pitted against his imperial sovereign and commonly proved an overmatch for him. And so it's just a common occurrence that the guy who's supposed to be at top leading everybody, imagine I saw it as people these days are looking at DeSantis versus Biden and all these situations. It's like DeSantis being able to rise up and militarily match the power of the federal government and say, I'm going to throw Joe Biden in jail. Like that, imagine that happening. You just can't do it here.
No, you can't.
That'd be chaos because there's 50 states.
Exactly.
And if one state goes delinquent and then has the power to match the federal government, oh my gosh.
And we've got big problems
Constant
there, right?
Chaos.
I could see Texas doing that. But that also goes to this point, is that Texas has this we always go back to Texas here, don't we?
Love it.
Texas has this very independent.
Bernie. Shout out to Bernie, Texas.
Amen. Has this very independent, strong-willed, screw you, I'm going to do what I want spirit to it. And that's kind of what we're seeing with I think Saxony, right? Was the one that he referenced specifically, right? And it's the same general idea. And so the founders were actually really genius to say, we don't really want to do that. because they could already tell they were having these battles right here between New York and Virginia, right? And the idea of New York overtaking Virginia, just because it had the sheer will to do so and the manpower probably, was terrifying to them. And they knew that it could happen because they looked to Germany and the Germanic states. So
yeah.
It's a tough thing happening over there, but they were smart to get ahead of it.
Yeah, and this all goes back to that anti-federalist versus federalist debate. The anti-federalists, I'm very much on their side on a ton of things. But they were worried about creating a too powerful centralized government. Now I think we have a too powerful centralized government. But at the time, the Federalists were trying to use this as an example for them of what happens when you don't have enough of a national grip on everything to be able to move the country and all of the sovereign states in one direction.
Right.
So just some of the examples of what Germany experienced that the founders cited was that Germany was desolated by a war of 30 years in which the emperor with one half of the empire was on one side and Sweden with the other half of the empire was on the other side. And so half of the German groups were on one side, half were on the other. The leader of the German groups was on one side, going against the other guys, and there were foreign powers involved on both of those sides. So then what happened after this is that peace after the war was at length negotiated and dictated by foreign powers. So then you have two halves of an entity allowing both sides of foreign powers from a war to be a part of the negotiation process of one country. What kind of chaos is that? I mean, what it reminded me of is the Treaty of Paris. Remember after the World War?
One? But yeah.
So after the Revolutionary War, good. Look at you. You're so smart. Treaty of Paris was signed after the French and Indian War is what Connor is referencing. And then the
Vietnam.
next one, oh, yes. And then the next one was Revolutionary War. And then there was the one with Vietnam. But the second one for the Revolutionary War that I'm talking about, they really wanted to make sure that America was at the bargaining table as its own country, that it wasn't on the table to negotiate America's sovereignty. It wasn't on the table to say America's now a country. No, America is a country, and they're coming to the table to negotiate peace as their own country with a country that they just fought, England. And it was really important for the founders to do that because England was trying to say that part of the negotiation was allowing America to say we're now independent.
Yeah, they set Yeah, they set a baseline for the negotiations. Basically, they went in with their cards and said, "This is what we got, and we're not budging from here."
Yeah, and so imagine then having to go, if you're in Germany or in the Germanic states, to allow two sides from a war of two different sets of countries not involved in your country at all to be a part of the negotiations that have to do with your internal conflicts. A mess.
It's a bit of foreshadowing, though, by the way, because I think we saw something almost exactly similar to that.
Connor!
A little bit down the road, right? East and West Germany.
And look
Cold
how that
War.
turned out.
Yeah, not very good, right?
What a mess. Oh, man.
Have you ever been to Germany?
I've never been to Europe.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm ever going now because I'm not vaxxed.
No, probably not. I'm going to tell you a really quick aside here because we don't have a lot of time. But if you go to Germany, right, you go to the place where the Berlin Wall was, and it was torn down, thank God. There is such a clear delineation, right, between where the old East Germany was and where the old West Germany was in terms of architecture, in terms of the behavior of the people that live there, in terms of just the general beauty and the upkeep and everything, right? And that's no way to have a country, obviously, right?
No.
And it has lasting impacts because I was in there in, 2014 or so? And the Cold War ended, the wall came down in 1991. I could be wrong there, but we'll see. So it has really lasting impacts, and it's not a sustainable way to build a country at all. Yeah. So they got ahead of that.
Jeez, what a foreshadowing!
Yeah, literally.
Great connection. I can't believe I missed that.
You were reading all that, and I was like, wait a second, this tracks exactly.
Yeah, because what it says is peace was at length negotiated and dictated by foreign powers, and the articles of it, to which foreign powers are parties, made a fundamental part of the Germanic constitution. I mean, it was kind of horrible, I think, horrible for all of the world powers to look at half of Germany and say, and everybody behind the Iron Curtain to say, yeah, we're willing to now give full control of you and your futures to the USSR. Have fun, because they went from surviving Nazism to surviving communism, and many didn't survive.
Yeah, well, I mean...
disgusting.
To be fair, Germany did declare war.
I get it.
On
I
the
get
world.
it. I know the whole. There's a
Twice.
lot going on there. Also, friendly reminder: the USSR did not just want to ally with the West. They did not want to be like, "Hey, America, let's fight a war together." Instead, they wanted to be friends and ally with the Nazis. And Hitler betrayed Stalin.
Right.
And so Stalin was like, "What are you doing? Why are you invading me
could have
too?
been so
You've
good."
betrayed me,
Right.
and now I have to fight with America. Let's just set the standard there." Okay, so that's a whole other problem. And we could do 5 million episodes on that, but this is about America's founding. So let's divert back to that one.
Excuse me.
Another problem that he says that America could face in this situation, going against the concerns of the anti-federalists, is he was saying because of this weakness, if the nation happens on any emergency to be more united by the necessity of self-defense, so maybe they aren't fighting each other, maybe they have to band together and fight a foreign aggressor, its situation is still deplorable for Hillary Clinton. Military preparations must be preceded by so many tedious discussions arising from the jealousies, pride, separate views, and clashing pretensions of sovereign bodies that before the Diet can settle the arrangements, the enemy are in the field, and before the federal troops are ready to even take it, they are retiring into winter quarters. And so before we can even get to the battlefield to fight a war, if we are being attacked, we have to have a million different conversations because there isn't one national mission. You have to get all of the sovereign states to agree to spend resources, put troops, and put all of their energy behind one common cause. But how can you get that common cause agreed upon and invested into by all the states if they aren't really interested in working as a team?
Yeah, it's impossible to have
mess.
a common cause if you don't have a common identity.
Mhm.
Right?
Ooh.
And we're seeing that right now, too. I'm going to keep bringing it back to the present because it's where I feel a lot more comfortable than the
Germanic
Germanic
body.
history, right?
What? You're not an expert either on
No,
this?
I know. What the hell? But we're seeing right now that we obviously, as a nation, have a common enemy with China.
Mhm.
But it
Oh.
is impossible to convince the United States at large that that is that's the case, right? And the reason is the exact same. You can't have a common enemy if you don't have a common identity. And the folks on the left who seem to be, and some on the right, who seem to be very much aligned with China in a lot of ways, it's almost like they don't want us to have a common identity. They don't want us to have borders. They don't want us to have a shared language. They don't want us to, love our brothers and sisters and love our land. And so whenever it comes time for us to actually respond to maybe another 9/11 or perhaps a bioterror attack like COVID-19, which we should have responded much more forcefully to, it's completely impossible to do that because we have nothing to rally behind. We used to rally behind the flag. We burn the flag now.
Actually,
half of us
speaking
do.
of which, interesting tidbit from just general anti-federalists versus federalists. One of the arguments by the anti-federalists, again in general, was that a civic education, an educated population, if we kept that up, would never make bad decisions in that sense. If we remained an educated population, we would be able to avoid instances of tyranny, and we would be able to be separate sovereign states that don't go into the problems of history. And the Federalists were saying, okay, so then what happens if we get one round of a population, one generation that's ignorant? What if civic education fails for one phase of a country? And what do you know? Those people then end up trying to oppress each other because they don't understand history. What do you do in that situation? You have to have a structure of government that protects against anybody that would want to be oppressive. It's too naive to assume that, we'll just remain smart and educated because we're American. We're going to understand how important it is to keep this going. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I
Isn't
think
that crazy?
It's insane. I think it was fair for the founders to assume that everyone would love this beautiful experiment that they were building as much as they did, and that was the case for a long time. And one final note on that: the education system that ended up actually corrupting and corroding the American project actually came from the German historicist tradition, right? Of Marcuse and Nietzsche and all these different people. So it's almost like we recognize that there were really bad ideas happening over there, and then we put them away for a little while, and then some people with probably really bad intentions came back and said, let's bring those back over, right? And let's figure out how we can divide everybody to make America a weaker nation. So
wow.
Yeah, the Germans, they're sneaky. You got to watch out for those Germans, frankly.
Way to close that loop.
I'm a loop closer.
Whoop. All right, we'll move on to the next one. I'm a loop closer. Let's get that on a t-shirt.
Quote graphic.
So next up, there was a transition in Germany. that Publius then goes on to talk about. An experiment, if you will. He says, the impossibility of maintaining order and dispensing justice among these sovereign subjects produced the experiment of dividing the empire into 9 or 10 circles of districts, of giving them an interior organization, and of charging them with the military execution of the laws against delinquent and contumacious members. This experiment has only served to demonstrate more fully the radical vice of the Constitution. And this was the spiciest sentence of the paper. He says, each circle that was created is the miniature picture of the deformities of this political monster.
Exactly right. It really is beautiful.
So what I got out of that, it's already a problem. The situation of decentralized power, but the states having enough power to challenge the central government is so chaotic, so messy, that when they finally tried to make changes, they didn't make the proper changes. They just made many bad problems of the original core issue.
Right.
And then you had 9 or 10 mini bad situations.
Yeah.
And what he calls them, deformities of the political monster.
That's what it was, though. I mean, it was just absolute sheer chaos and disorder. And that's what we were trying to avoid whenever we said, you know what, scrap it. Scrap the entire articles. We're going to go back to the drawing board and redo it from the start.
Yeah.
It may be painful, it may be arduous, it may be tedious, but it'll be worth it, right? So we don't end up like these guys over here.
Yeah, well, and so that final message, we're going to get to that wrap up for that theme of mediocrity that I got out of it. After going through all the problems, and he goes into a lot more detail, so I encourage you guys to actually read the papers, but there's some big names, there's some big words that I'm just not going to use. He then summarizes it all after going through all the problems, and he says, it may be asked, perhaps, what has so long kept this disjointed machine from falling entirely to pieces? The answer is obvious. The weakness of most of the members who are unwilling to expose themselves to the mercy of foreign powers. The weakness of the principal members compared to the formidable powers all around them. The vast weight and influence of the emperor derives from his separate and hereditary dominions, and the interest he feels in preserving a system with which his family pride is connected, and which constitutes him the first prince in Europe. These causes support a feeble and precarious union, whilst the repellent quality incident to the nature of sovereignty, and which time continually strengthens, prevents any reform whatever founded on a proper consolidation. So, I mean, the problem is that they're in this no-win situation. It's a lose-lose situation where there's enough structure to allow the current form of government, the current situation, to continue without collapsing, but they are never going to get out of it unless they make serious structural change.
Right.
And they are going to continue on a path of constant civil war, constant fighting with enemy forces because they're not strong enough to prevent them, and constant mediocrity in their civilization because of this deterioration of society with all of these problems that they're facing. And there's really no way to get out of it because on top of that, you have these people that think that they are, with this German mindset, put in charge and in such a powerful position, they don't want to give it up. And they reference the leader who is considered the first prince of Europe.
Right.
He's attached to it in an emotional way. So everybody has their own claims to why this system should continue, even if it's a failing system.
Yeah. I mean, those who are granted power that don't deserve it will never let go of that power, right? Because they just feel so, they don't really know why they're there. You know, in this case, it was hereditary, right? They don't get why they're there, but they know that they're there, and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing here, but I'm not going to let go of it, damn it, because I've got a lot of power over these people. And so they were just basically stuck in their ways, and they said, you're not getting me out of here. I'm on the top of the sandbox here, right? And that led to a lot of issues, obviously. And this is also a great case for why we shouldn't be a monarchy, right? Which I think we'd established that by now, right? But this was a really great case for that as well. So there's so many lessons to be learned from what we saw there. And the other thing that I took away from this, and if you got to wrap something else up, we can. But the one thing that I took away from this, though, is that you can experience whiplash as a civilization or as like a society or a culture or whatever, to going from, you know, a weak central authority that looks good on paper but actually is totally ineffectual, to a brutal and strong-armed and imperial dictatorship like that due to overcompensation, right? So it's important to find that sweet middle ground that we did in America, right? But whenever you think about the Germany that we all are familiar with historically, we're talking about a strong central government, right? the one that burned down the Reichstag, and the one that invaded Poland, and the one that laid Austria down without firing a shot, right?
Yeah, well, it's that same lesson that you're taking. He kind of closes up. It's this weird foreshadowing, Connor, because the whole paper is about
It's
the
almost like
Germanic
history
body.
repeats itself. I don't know.
The chaos caused by this system of government that they had set up for hundreds of years. It then talks about the other examples of neighboring areas. And so it says, if more direct examples were wanting, Poland, blah, 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 and it goes on to talk about Poland. It says Poland was equally unfit for self-government and self-defense. It has long been at the mercy of its powerful neighbors.
Poland is one of the best countries on earth, right? And our good friend and contributor at Turning Point, Jack Posobiec, he is a proud Pole, as almost all Poles are. They're very, very proud people. But they are the punching bag of the globe. They are just continually dominated by whoever has, the capricious will to go overtake their nation. And that's just a symptom of the culture at large that exists there. For whatever reason, it's always been confounding to me.
Yeah.
I don't know, but Poland's a beautiful country.
Yeah,
Beautiful
and it's a
Catholic
shame
country.
because it talks about Poland, and then it says the connection among the Swiss cantons as well. They have no common treasury, no common troops, even in war, no common coin, no common judiciatory, nor any other common mark of sovereignty. But what's interesting, like you said, with the people of Poland being so proud of everything, there's this concept of pride and heritage in Europe that we just don't have in America anymore. So I am constantly trying to let people know, like, we have culture in America, we have heritage, we have traditions. Don't let the radical left tell you that we are uncultured people or anything like that. I mean, yeah, I think we have problems and our society is decaying quite a lot. And I would like to see some more traditional behavior, but I think there are things in America that are cultural and traditional that we can pass down by generation. But it says that these countries, part of what keeps them together is just the sense that they feel together. They might not have the best forms of government, but they are kept together by the peculiarity of their topographical position, by their individual weakness and insignificancy. So that's the thing, is like, they aren't trying to be leaders of the world stage in the Swiss cantons, but something about their area and their culture, their people, brings them together. And some of that could be by the fear of powerful neighbors,
concept.
right? By fear of powerful neighbors, though. So they talk about Poland, they talk about Swiss cantons, and the other smaller areas around Germany. And they say a lot of these other countries are weak because they're constantly scared of their more powerful neighbors.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, and this is more of a broad topic here, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I was talking to Olivia about this the other day, actually. And so America is straying away, and we're so divided and we're so chaotic right now, because we've gotten away from this common identity that we're talking about, right? We are set up in such a beautiful geographic position to be able to share a common identity and have no reason for that to ever be corrupted, by outside forces, right? Unless we allow them in here through legal immigration, which we overdid. But the more that we let these forces come in and corrupt our nation, the more we stray away from fundamental American values like family, right? And property ownership and land ownership and things that actually matter and that are permanent. And then all of a sudden we sit here after degrading the family and deteriorating the idea of private property and, demeaning the notion of a border or a shared language or even a shared currency. And then conservatives are left sitting here wondering, what's going on? Where's my country, right? And that's when we all need to step back and ask ourselves, did we fail at conserving America? And the answer is obviously yes. Obviously. Yeah. And the question, though, is why don't we have leaders who give a damn about our nation enough to say, well, no, America is exceptional. I wish that we had a little bit of that spirit that they have over there in Europe a lot of times, where they will wave their flag left and right, and it's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
We used to do that. Not anymore, though. And it really, really, really hurts my heart to think that we have such sinister, evil people at the top of the political food chain here in America, who are so willing to just give up on what these geniuses who wrote this paper, so thoughtfully crafted.
Yeah, and Publius kind of touches on that actually to finish off the paper, and they talk about Poland, they talk about Germany, and they kind of summarize and compare it to what's going on right at the time with the Articles of Confederation. And they say, whatever efficacy the Union may have had in ordinary cases, it appears that the moment a cause of difference sprang up capable of trying its strength, it failed. And so in all those historical situations, whether the last paper or this one, the ancient and the present examples they cited, and with the Articles of Confederation in America, every time this system of government is tested, it kind of fails. And so that's really the lesson that we should be getting out of this. It's been tested so many times before. It's being tested now, and it's not working, so why move forward on it?
Yeah.
Is kind of the wrap-up message. But getting back to that message we were talking about earlier and what you were touching on, this idea that our founders were brilliant in the sense of they acknowledged we could have a completely horrific time as a country and have constant warring and all this terrible stuff, or we could be more like the Germanic body and have mediocrity just suck us into centuries of not that kind of
middle of the road.
Yeah, middle of the road, but not even middle of the road, but like less than mediocre situation. And we want more than that. And so they acknowledge that there's evil out there. They acknowledge the negative aspects of mankind and human nature. And what Charles Kessler had acknowledged in the introduction to this paper, what's acknowledged so many times throughout the writings of this time period, is that we need to acknowledge mankind and write a government that prevents bad behavior, but allows for human excellence. And that is what we allowed. I don't know if you saw this, but I kind of want to end on this one. I watch Fox News, and I love watching Outnumbered. So Harris Faulkner, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Harris Faulkner, she had a guest on who was more liberal and was talking about how, we should be embarrassed to be America. We have a bad history, all this stuff. And Harris Faulkner, who is black, she was like, my father, or maybe it was her grandfather, men in my family generations before, when America was not at its best, especially for black Americans, fought for this country. He's a veteran. And he did it because of the concept of what America is, always changing in the sense that our structure of government and society allows for positive change when we know it's time to reform. Now, that doesn't mean crazy constitutional changes like getting rid of the filibuster or packing the court or doing anything dangerous that could disrupt the system, but it means allowing for changes in society to improve seek human excellence and allow for positive change. And I thought that was really special. That's something that the left cannot accept. They act like we are the slave owners of the 1700s when we talk about American history, and I think it's shameful. They're building this message, especially for young students in classrooms, that America is not a country to be proud of. When you don't think that your country is something to be proud of, you're a lot less likely to defend it or want to protect it or want to sacrifice to allow it to continue. And not only that, are you a lot less likely to want to protect it and make it continue, you're a lot more likely to join the side that wants to end it completely.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing.
Well, America is an exceptional nation. That's a fact. It's an objective truth. But in order to make people hate America, you have to make America hateable.
Ooh.
It has to become a place that's worth hating. And that's what they've done such a good job at by continuously reminding us of our past and reminding us of the slave trade and reminding us of the Jim Crow and all these things. But they refuse to acknowledge the fact that we have overcome more than any other nation ever in such a condensed period of time. That's the other thing people fail to realize. We're talking about a 250-year-old country. I think less, actually, 248-year-old country, right? And we have gone through hell and high water and a civil war and back again and then to the moon. And we're not going to acknowledge the fact that we fought like hell to make this a beautiful place for everybody?
Yeah.
Well, it makes it seem like it's intentional. It makes it seem like they're just trying to make it seem like a place that is bad and terrible and worth destroying.
It's so intentional. It's not even funny. And
because why else would you leave the borders wide open? And why else would you allow the cities to burn, right?
Well, it's all the decisions made over the last year. I think a lot of Americans are starting to say, this sounds a lot less like incompetence and a lot more like intentional leadership decisions. And I don't mean leadership as in like they're leading us to a great place. I mean, you're in a powerful position of leadership where you should be making good decisions on behalf of the people. And for some reason, you're using your leadership position to make decisions that don't positively impact anybody in this country, but you say that it's for our better.
And your family also has strong ties to China.
Ugh,
I don't
that's a
know.
whole
Chew
other
on that
thing.
one for a little
That's
bit.
a
Why
whole
don't you?
other thing. Gosh, that makes me mad. But Connor, that's a really great point.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up, you guys. Thanks for listening to Freedom Papers. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this history lesson on the Germanic body over the last 1,000 years, I guess, because we're talking about Charlemagne.
Right.
But yeah, final lesson, what you were talking about with this idea of understanding how far we've come. Comparative history is a concept completely abandoned in American history classes. And it's just the concept of saying, this is where we are. This is where we used to be. Look how far we've come. The ability to compare and contrast and say, wow, a lot's happened.
Yep.
The other thing is 200 years is not a very long time.
It's actually a very short period
fast.
of time.
When I read, especially like I have a bunch of homesteader books.
Uh-huh.
My favorite is
Naturally.
Montana Women Homesteaders. Duh.
Right.
And it talks about just 2 generations before us. The men and women who are our age, I don't know if you knew much about this, Connor, but like single women were allowed to homestead.
Yeah.
And so if you were single or if you were proven to have been like abandoned by your husband.
Mhm.
And so before getting married, a lot of women would have the support of their brothers and their fathers, and they would get a piece of land and homestead on it and then hopefully meet their husband before. And it's just so interesting reading. This was just 2 generations before us.
Yeah.
People were wagoning out to the
Great
west,
American West.
out to Montana on a wagon, living in a tiny little wood hut that they would have built by hand. And now look at us now in this fancy high-tech studio, just talking about it as if it's ancient. And that's what really breaks my heart, is we can't make those connections from generation to generation. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls to America, is we didn't pass down the stories and the sacrifices. Generation to generation, we've taken it for granted. I'm going on a rant now about homesteading. So let's wrap it up. You guys, thanks for listening to Freedom Papers, and be sure to tune in. Be sure to subscribe on Apple,
5 stars.
Spotify, and YouTube. You can find us at Turning Points page. But thanks for listening, and get your copy. Connor, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
The left is all talk. We know this is true. They say they stand for something, but it's actually the exact opposite because, duh, they're liars. So when they say they stand for women's rights, I laugh because it's just not true.
Yeah, right.
I hear a lot of conservatives say that they're not feminists, and I get it. And I hear leftists claim they're the end-all be-all for feminism. So I've got to ask, who are the real feminists, conservatives or leftists? And can she please stand up so we can settle this once and for all?
Stand up, girl. Just stand up, girl. You got to stand up and go on.
On this special episode of Politics, we're going to decide who is actually pro-woman. And trust me, the result will shock you. I'm Alex Clark, and this is your quick politic on feminism. If you pay any attention to social media, then you're likely up to speed with the word on the street. Apparently, women in the West are being oppressed at record rates. Women's suffrage too. It's like women's equality never happened.
Is your husband home?
No,
Is there a man here I can talk to?
not right now.
I see. Is there anybody in this house that can vote?
I've been voting all my life. Well, I mean, since I was old enough.
This is not against the law?
No, it is not.
So let's do a little recap to see how far we've come, shall we? The first wave took place from around the 1830s to the early 1900s. Now, their cause was legit. Women literally could not vote, so women's suffrage was a major focus at the time.
Women, we have spent decades fighting for our right to vote. So when you go to those booths and cast your ballot, remember, Warren G. Harding is way the cutest!
See, this is the sort of rah-rah feminism I can get behind. The right to actually vote, not the hate our men, dye our hair blue, abort the babies kind.
Mostly I feel feminine or non-binary.
Today I'm feeling really femme.
Then in the 1960s came the second wave. This time, women had more rights than they did when the first wave began, except feminists were fighting for reproductive rights, like abortion, rights in the workplace, and in the family. Think Mad Men, Burn Your Bra, March Against Vietnam, all the cliche feminine stuff that comes to mind.
I'm not stupid.
That wave lasted like 2 decades, and the movement actually had ties to other movements like the gay and lesbian, black civil rights, Chicano rights, and the Asian America civil rights movements, to name a few. It's safe to say that the advocacy at the time was a hodgepodge, so basically as messy and confusing as it is now.
Mr. Krabs, I am so confused.
Then, in the 90s through the early 2000s, there was a new wave described by the progressive women leadership as a movement that focused on the micro-politics of gender equality. I'm sorry, micro-politics? What does that even mean when it comes to feminism?
Listen, bud. Hey, this is the 90s. Women are treated equal.
I'll admit it, the feminist movement has some big achievements to brag about, right? In America, women have achieved freedom, equal rights, and have made it into the workplace. I mean, I'm here, right?
Dang, girl smurfs mean business.
But wait, it didn't stop there. Today, the feminism gods have given us hashtagable movements like Me Too and Time's Up. Now, I'm not here to deny that some women have faced both difficulties in the workplace and flat-out injustices in life. The world is filled with bad people who do very bad things. But I find it so ironic that these movements come out of places that, I don't know, are guilty of the things that blame society for. Looking at you, Hollywood.
Sad.
The way I see feminist outrage today, it's like a vintage grievance. Not cute, not in style, and out of date.
You're tacky and I hate you.
So why bring up this brief little history tour? Because while early feminists fought for equal rights, today's feminists are fighting to remove the uniqueness of being a woman and trying to make them so equal that you can't even differentiate them from the men.
I don't know your gender. I don't know Candace's. I don't know mine.
You don't know my gender?
I don't.
Do I look like a woman?
I don't know what a woman looks like.
So, reason one why the left is actually not pro-woman, they deny the basic biology of women.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science.
Let's look at one example. Periods. Women have periods. We don't always wish we did, but we do. And it's the left that claims men can have periods too.
I read somewhere that their periods attract bears. The bears can smell the menstruation.
According to publications like 17 magazine, men can menstruate. Non-binary folks can menstruate. Intersex people can menstruate. Agender people can menstruate. The fact that an organ in your body has the ability to shed its lining every once in a while does not determine who you are as a person or how the world should recognize you.
It's amazing. You are 100% wrong.
The popular brand Always even removed the Venus symbol from its products in the name of inclusion, suggesting, once again, that not just women have periods.
I need to correct you on that point.
The insanity doesn't stop with Aunt Flo. Men, or men who wish to identify as women, should also be made to feel included in the pregnancy experience, according to the left. Recently, a Harvard professor of evolutionary biology was blasted by her department's diversity director because she refused to use the woke term pregnant people. Her woke peers think that words such as male and female are dangerous.
By now you should know your bitch is pregnant.
If it's dangerous to specify male from female, and if male and female are merely social constructs, shouldn't we completely disregard the first wave of feminism and all those that fought for equal rights for women and what they accomplished? I mean, they only fought for the rights of biological women. Sounds pretty dangerous and exclusive of them.
They're not gonna let you in at the country club with that.
I wonder what the OG feminists would have thought of modern leftist feminists hell-bent on including men in bodily female functions like, you know, breastfeeding. I'm sorry, I mean chest feeding. No, wait, body feeding. We're literally eliminating language pertaining to inherently female traits.
You know that's breast milk.
So technically, someone's chest cannot feed a child. Only the breast produces milk, which means that a baby can only be fed by a breast, not a chest, okay? And don't even get me started with the image that body feeding leaves in my mind.
Everybody's been real nice.
Well, that's because you have big jugs.
In all seriousness, though, leftists are eliminating female-centered words, denying the unique biological functions of women, and acting like this is all inclusive. How is it inclusive when you don't let biological women acknowledge that their own bodies are different from men?
I am very cute, I am very alone, and I'm very protective of my body.
Reason two why the left is not pro-woman, they want to deny them the ability to defend themselves. It is no secret that the left wants to ban all things guns, but there is a reason conservatives call firearms the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're buff, a noodle, or a worm like me. Give a girl a firearm and we can keep ourselves and our families safe just like everyone else.
Shut up and keep your hands to yourself or I'll cut your little pecker off.
But the left doesn't want that. They preach that women should be powerful and stand up for ourselves, but they take away the thing that actually allows us to do that.
I'll kill you. I'll kill you.
Women owning firearms gives us a strong defense in attacks, home invasions, and more. Giving someone a gun levels the playing field to people bigger than us. Do these leftists want women to stay in danger? Because they should be terrified to find that female gun ownership has risen 40% just this year. While the left tries to force victimization on you, know that conservatives support your right to defend and protect yourself like everybody else.
I won't hesitate.
Reason 3 why the left is not pro-woman, they're not pro-life. Sorry, not sorry, but feminism entails standing up for the rights of all women, born and unborn. Abortion not only ends the life of an unborn baby, it can also harm the women who have had the procedure. I'm not saying that pregnancy is the only defining trait women have, but it is perhaps the most significant difference we have compared to men. And rather than acknowledging the beauty of pregnancy, the left treats it as if it's something optional that can just be thrown away or a disease. And not only that, the rhetoric the left uses around abortion is misleading. They call it healthcare, which is weird because I was under the impression that true healthcare involves a doctor doing their absolute best to save their patients. In pregnancy, there are 2 separate patients. Killing one on purpose isn't healthcare.
Let's go make a killing.
Abortion is a violent act committed against the unborn, but it is also an act committed against women's bodies. It doesn't get any more anti-woman than that.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Conservatives believe in preservation, as in preserving what makes women great. That is feminism. To acknowledge the distinctions in biological functions in today's crazy times is to preserve science. And it ultimately means to respect the general differences that make women so great. It's not that women are better than men, and it's not that women should root their identity in one cinnamon roll cut way. But it also shouldn't be controversial to publicly say, yeah, women can get their period, have babies, and maybe even breastfeed. Sorry, men, but you've got to sit these experiences out. And if other women disagree with us on this, we don't wish to silence you.
I don't know why Dion's going out with a high school boy. They're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you.
Preserving womanhood doesn't just stop there. To defend women is to defend their right to self-defense, as in the Second Amendment. To defend women also means to defend those who cannot do so for themselves. The most vulnerable females we can all defend are those in the womb, whose lives have the ability to change our world.
I'm a big tough girl. I tie my own sandals and everything.
So maybe some of you cute conservatives don't identify as feminists because the left has ruined the word and the original intent of the movement over all these decades. But never let any leftist make you feel like you're not the most pro-woman person in the room.
That's a woman who knows how to do her job. She's keeping it real.
Hit the heart if you liked what I had to say today. Tag somebody in the comments that you think needs to hear this. Share it to your stories. Make sure you hit that save button. And we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Poplitics.